Testing. Can anyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Michael.
Very good. Good afternoon, Liz.
Thank you. How are you doing today?
It's good for a Monday.
Yeah.
170.
Busy weekend, but nice day.
Hi, Liz. Can you hear Julia? Can you hear Julia?
Thank you. I hear you. Is Council President Ginny in the house?
Thank you, Councilor Brandon. Sorry I'm late.
Anissa is here. Okay.
Here.
Hi.
Good morning, everybody.
You said you want applicants?
We're just waiting on Council President Jenny. If she has arrived, let me know. I might, it's 9 minutes past 12. I'll give her another minute and we'll see.
Hello?
Hello?
Hi, Madam Chair, this is Michaela, staff member of Council President Janey. She's having trouble getting onto the Zoom and she'll be on in a few minutes.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think the mayor said.
Look at my camera. I think I might actually start the proceedings. President Ginny will be joining us momentarily. I can do the preamble. So I see myself here. Good afternoon, everyone. Just call this owner's Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting to order. For the record, my name is Liz Braden. I am the chair of the Boston City Council Committee on Women, Strong Women, Families and Communities. I'm joined today by my colleagues, Councillor Campbell, Councillor Mejia, Councillor Flynn, Councillor Bach, Councillor Anissa Savi-George, Councillor Matt O'Malley, Councillor Flaherty, and Councillor Royal. Council President Ginny will join us momentarily. And I also have a letter of apology from our Councillor Edwards, which I will read into the record now. Dear Chair Braden, I regret I am unable to attend the June 8th, 2020 Committee on Docket number 0673 regarding the preparation of youth employment opportunities amid the post-COVID pandemic. I am hopeful that the city will explore funding youth summer jobs for our pandemic recovery response, including food access and elderly services. The City of Boston should also explore utilizing our youth to assist in our city departments with constituent services resources, 2020 census outreach efforts, and neighborhood cleanup sites. Thank you. Please read this letter into the record. Regards, Lydia Edwards, Boston City Councillor, District 1. I want to remind you that this is a public hearing. It is being recorded and will be rebroadcast on Comcast 8, RCN 82, and Verizon 1964 at a later date. It is currently being streamed on boston.gov City Council-TV. We will also take public testimony at the end of this hearing. If you're interested in testifying, please email Ron, R-O-N .cobb, C-O-B-B, at boston.gov for the link, and follow along on the live stream to know when it is your turn to speak. Please state your name and affiliation and residence, and limit your comments to a few minutes to ensure that all comments and concerns can be heard. Today's hearing is on docket number 07 for hearing to explore preparation for youth employment opportunities amid the post-COVID-19 pandemic. Opening statements, we will take opening statements from the lead co-sponsors. Those co-sponsors will be allocated 7 minutes for their comments. Then we will follow up with any opening comments from our fellow councillors. And then we will move to take testimony from the panel of invited speakers. So I will first of all ask my colleague, Councillor Campbell from District to make her opening statements on this docket. Thank you. Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Councillor Braden, and congratulations on your first hearing. This is great. Thank you, of course, to all the panelists who are joined us today to talk about a pressing issue. And of course, thank you to my co-sponsors, Councillors Mejia and Councillor Janey, on this pressing topic. When we called for this hearing, it was actually in late April. We were in the peak of COVID-19, and we had recently experienced much violence in my district, which is largely Dorchester and Mattapan, including the homicide of a 17-year-old young lady. And so this was called with the hopes that not only will we have a robust conversation on what we could do for our young people in terms of employment opportunities over the summer, but also what those opportunities might look like in the fall, given the pandemic, and now with new reports that the pandemic will likely not sort of go away in the fall. How do we think creatively around creating virtual and remote job opportunities for our young folks? I know the administration has put out a survey to employers, is looking into ways in which to make sure that there is a robust opportunities available for our young people. This is an opportunity to hear what those are, and of course to see how the council can work in partnership on these pressing issues to ensure that every single young person who wants a job and an opportunity over the summer and the fall is able to obtain one. We talked a lot about, not just me, but also Councillors Mejia and Councillor Janey, on how we were those young people growing up in the city of Boston. Born and raised here, we had summer jobs through the PIC, through ABCD. Those jobs were not just important in terms of income, often used sometimes to support our families, but also was a big part of our identity, of us taking ownership and who we are, of us becoming more confident, us getting mentors through those opportunities. The list is long as to the value of these employment opportunities. And so we are hopeful that the administration will not only look at the line item with respect to youth jobs, but look at and possibly increasing it to ensure that every single young person has access. And now that we are in a new sort of context with the murder of George Floyd Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery. The list is long and it continues to grow, of course. This is really a critical time for our young people, not only in terms of protecting their mental health and serving them, but to really think critically around opportunities that will allow them to channel all that they're feeling right now in this new context into productive work. And so I am pushing for not only updates on these issues, but also real investment and more investment in these opportunities. And lastly, I'll say, we've been talking a lot on the public safety side around how we reinvest resources, redirect resources from our police department into opportunities that will help our young people and our residents at the beginning point avoid participating in criminal activity or avoid interacting with police in such a way that isn't productive. And so this is an opportunity to help our young people. It is proven that when people have good jobs, they're less likely, and good opportunity, and equitable economic opportunity to turn to things, they're less likely to turn to behavior that's not productive. They're less likely to get involved in a gang or end up in our criminal justice system. It's important to invest at the forefront, not at the end. And so looking forward to having that robust conversation today. Lastly, I have to give a special shout out to Rashad, who lives in the district, for the incredible work you continue to do, of course, and not only thinking about what you can do in the city, but also partnering with our higher ed institutions. Midori, thank you as well. We've worked on a lot of different employment opportunities. Rufus, I think, is also on. He's doing a lot in the public safety space. So really appreciate you guys taking the time to be on this hearing today, and looking forward to working in partnership with you as well as my colleagues. Thank you very much, and thank you, Councilor Braden, and congratulations on your first hearing.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. I will now call on Councillor Julia Mejia to make her opening statement. Thank you. I'm setting the clock, Julia. You've got 7 minutes.
Well, I'll be
Councillor,
find out.
got me looking big. Go for it.
All right, then. So I'm going to keep it brief. Thank you, Councillor Breeden. Congratulations on sharing your first hearing and how appropriate it is, deeply rooted in the things that are impacting our most vulnerable. So happy to be joining you on this, as well as I want to thank Councillor Campbell for her leadership in this space, as well as President Council Janey for their passion around this issue. As she mentioned, we're both city kids. Have worked in Boston PIC, ABCD. So for me, this conversation is personal and professional. Having been the beneficiary of youth employment while growing up, I know that youth having a job was what literally saved my life. And I know that it's not just about making those ends meet, but it's really about developing strong work ethic for young people and creating opportunities for them to look at career explorations as viable employment opportunities outside of their everyday lives. My hope is, as we continue to talk about youth jobs, that we also look beyond summer employment and looking at year-long employment. How can we as a city invest in resources to ensure that we're employing young people throughout the entire year, not just during the summer? And I know that this initial hearing was brought forth as a result of COVID, and really looking to the city to really explore how can we create meaningful opportunities for young people to serve as civic leaders, to work in collaboration with the different departments that we have here, to build their capacity, to help support neighborhood services. So I think that we have a responsibility and an opportunity to figure out how we can include young people in ways that make sense. I will say this, that I remember when I was a kid, I wanted a pair of Nikes, and there was an insurance agency that moved around my way. I went up to them, I said, I know everybody here. If you put up a flyer, I'll tell everybody about you. And I made $26, and I've been working ever since. And I know that when we create opportunities for young people to define and identify what brings them the greatest joy and what their purpose in life is, then the young people will always be apt to, if you will, stay the course. And so as a city, we have a tremendous opportunity in front of us. And as a city council, looking forward to partnering up with each of you Rufus, Rashad, Midori, and the whole entire squad, to make sure that we are not only just finding those resources for young people, but that we are uplifting those opportunities. I'm also the chair of small business and workforce development. I think even looking at the Office of Economic Development, we have an opportunity there as well to find some really good jobs for our young people year round, as well as workforce development. What opportunities exist besides PIC that we have yet to uncover? I'm here for all of it. So with COVID-19, we're facing new challenges to youth employment. We need to find new creative ways to empower our young people economically in ways that uplift their mental health. One of the things that I'm going to be pushing for in all conversations that deal with workforce development and youth is that we're figuring out how we're going to bring mental wellness into every single conversation as part of their orientation. And we need to continue to drum that beat in terms of mental health. That's usually an afterthought, but I believe we need to push, given what our young people have been facing these days, that we need to talk about mental health. And that's why I'm so pleased to have young people who are here to speak with us today, because who better to uplift those issues than youth. And like Congresswoman Presley says, those who are closest to the pain should be the closest to the power. And we hope that this hearing will give us some insight in terms of what we need to do moving forward. Okay, that's it for me.
Thank you. Well done. That was wonderful. And plenty of time on the clock still. Thank you.
I'll use that to time.
I just want to check, is President Ginny able to get in yet? No? Okay, I will move to the Councillor Flynn. If you have any opening remarks.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Braden, and want to say thank you to the sponsors, Councillor Campbell, Council President Janey, Councillor Mejia, for their work on this important issue. I want to say thank you to Councillor Braden for chairing this meeting, and looking forward to hearing from the young people, their testimony about the importance of summer jobs. I'm also looking forward to in learning more about summer jobs and maybe how they can be expanded, whether it's into the fall as well or throughout the school year. But what partnerships they're developing or we're developing or helping to develop with some of these great businesses in Boston, colleges, universities, hospitals. Can we make sure that we have good partners that are part of this system where our young people are getting jobs, they're getting good education, a good training from these jobs, and also that maybe these jobs or internships could continue throughout the school year. I think our business community has to do a little bit more work in making sure that there's a better and more effective partnership year round with our young people in our city. These great businesses in the downtown area and in the South Boston waterfront, I'd like to see them do more work in connecting young people to these jobs and the training programs that are offered as well. So again, I also want to say thank you to Rashad and to Rufus and all the others in the Walsh administration for their important work that they're doing as well on these issues. So thank you. And thank you, Councillor Braden, and congratulations on sharing your first hearing as well.
Thank you, Councillor Flynn. Next up, would Councillor Bach like to make any opening remarks?
Yes, thank you so much, Madam Chair, and congratulations on the role. I excited to be here today. Thank the sponsors for holding this hearing. You know, we had Rashad with us, about a month back to talk about this program in the context of budget hearings. And one of the things that I think we've heard loud and clear from the youth advocates throughout the budget process is the desire to make sure that the city is really, picking up its commitment here, especially in a moment where a lot of those private opportunities that Councillor Campbell alluded to, are scarcer on the ground this summer because of COVID. And I've also heard from advocates the desire to, expand the age eligibility, to increase the number of supervisor jobs for older youth. So that's something that I've been tracking very closely. My office is working on. We want to host some young people this summer. And I just would echo what everyone has said about how important this is. And I think it's really important, first and foremost, just as an opportunity for human development for our young people and for leadership development and a sense of real ownership of the city. And I think we're all seeing a lot of young people raise their voices right now in this moment. And youth jobs are also part of giving them that agency and giving them the money that they and their families need. So it's a really important issue to me, and increased city commitment to it is really important to me. And I'm excited to hear today where we are. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor Bach. Councillor Anissa Sabi-George, have you any opening comments?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to the makers for this hearing. As someone who has spent an early part of her career on student supports around employment, I was a PIC career counselor. This is really important to me personally and professionally, and as a mother of teenagers, recognize how important it is to make sure that our kids have work opportunities across our city, but have meaningful work opportunities. And it's about the youth and the younger age group. We often talk about the 14, 15, and 16-year-olds, but making sure that as our young people age and grow, that we're making sure that they're exposed to greater opportunity to develop skills, to build their resume, and have meaningful employment, both in the summer, year-round, and school year. So I think there's a number of different opportunities that we should be having for our children. So excited about today's continued conversation about this, and looking forward to implementing some changes going forward, and very curious about the impacts of COVID and Corona, the pandemic, on our employment opportunities for our young people this summer. And as everyone else has, congratulations, Councillor Braden, on this first hearing. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Sabi-George. Next, opening comments. Councillor O'Malley? I think you must have stepped out. Let's see.
No, I'm sorry, Madam.
There you are.
Little technical difficulties. First off, congratulations on your first hearing. I'm proud to have passed on this reimagined committee to you, and you're obviously doing an incredible job. Thanks, of course, to the makers for this really important topic. I, like many people on this call, count my first city summer job with the city of Boston is just such a remarkable part of my foundation, and really part of my educational and career trajectory. So anything we can do to expand, make sure there are real worthwhile careers as well. I'm delighted to sort of see already, and I know we'll hear from the administration, some recommitted increased funding for these jobs, and looking at ways that we can do it well and do it in really an expansive program. Obviously, with everything happening right now, as we look at really reallocating budgets to address institutional racism, structural racism, overt racism, providing jobs, particularly summer jobs, is something that I know we are all committed to, and I certainly am. So I'm delighted to have this conversation, to hear from the administration, coupled with the fact that amidst pandemic, while we have seen some positive signs, there will be some increased safeguards that need to be put in place. So I know we had talked about this at the Ways and Means hearing, and know that as we have a little bit more clarity on what sort of reopening looks like, the phases of reopening, different prohibition that's going to occur within buildings in terms of safety and distancing, these are all important conversations to have, which is really the fundamental purpose of these hearings. So delighted to advocate both for the policy and practicality as we go forward, and look forward to hearing not only from the administration, but from stakeholders and residents as well. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the makers. I'm proud to be a co-sponsor on this very important conversation.
Thank you, Councillor O'Malley. I see we've been joined by Council President Janey. Councillor Janey, would you like to make your lead sponsor on hearing. Would you like to make some comments?
Yes. Can you hear me okay?
Hey,
Can you
still
guys
there?
hear and see me
Oops.
okay? Great. I apologize for
she's
being
still
late. I've had some difficulties with the technology with
Councillor
my
Jenny?
various. Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
I
I'm
can
getting the thumbs up from everyone else. Do I have a thumbs up? Okay, I think people can hear me. Chairwoman, can you hear me?
Yes.
I can hear you. You're a little wobbly.
Yeah. Okay. I'm grateful to be here. I had some difficulties, so
Yeah.
had to make some arrangements, and so I'm here, still in my district, but at my chief
Your
on his deck.
internet connection still seems a little.
No, I think my internet connection's okay. I think it's your internet connection, Madam Chair. Can I get a thumbs up that people can hear and see me okay? Yes, Madam Chair, I think it might be on your end. But I appreciate the opportunity to just quickly say thank you for your patience, Madam Chairwoman, and I want to certainly extend my deep gratitude to my colleagues for their sponsorship. So to the makers, thank you. This issue, very important. I can certainly speak from firsthand what this issue meant to me in terms of setting me up for my career. It is important to make sure that as we think about the reopening of our economy, as we think about how we will address this moment in our nation's history with new, progressive, bolder ideas that truly liberate and create equal playing field for all. This conversation is so critical to that. So I'm grateful for the opportunity to discuss ways that we can create more opportunities, especially for our young people. And again, grateful to the makers and all of my colleagues for joining in this important conversation. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I'm not sure if Councilor Braden is back. Who's the co-chair of this? Maybe somebody else can step in.
So yeah, I'm the co-chair. Madam President, with your blessing, maybe it makes sense for me to take over the hearing until Councilor Braden can get her internet squared away.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I'd certainly love to give her an opportunity to jump back in, but not seeing that, seeing her here or getting word from Carrie that she's reconnecting, I think it makes sense for you to take over as vice chair. And certainly when she's back. Wonderful.
I'm going to
read.
Councillor O'Malley, if you don't mind, could you take over for a few minutes? I'm going to relocate myself to see if I can get better reception.
They may also happen to keep video off, may also help with the connection, and I'm going to put myself on mute while you guys figure it out.
Certainly happy to, Madam Chair and Madam President. I apologize. I don't have the list of the order of speakers.
I think it's Councillor Arroyo.
Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor Arroyo.
Thank you.
Like to make an opening statement, please proceed.
Yeah, and it'll be brief. I just want to thank the sponsors for their leadership in bringing this forward. I want to thank the panelists for attending to talk about this important issue. And I just want to also offer my congratulations to Councilor Braden for her first hearing with some technical difficulties. Mine was online too. And so that we're part of a special group that hopefully never has to do this again with their first meetings online. I just want to be clear on how important these things are to me in terms of youth jobs. They really do matter. They make a difference in my household. It went towards helping with bills. It went towards helping with responsibilities and kind of creating a work ethic that for my siblings and myself really paid off. And as we look at schools being closed for the last couple of months and we're heading into the summer and folks really need structure, I think this is another way of looking at doing a number of different things where we can both help people economically, help them by providing a structured thing for them to do over the summer. And so I look forward to this conversation and I appreciate everybody who's here to both speak on it and to advocate for it. So thank you.
Thank you. I think I've regained my internet connection. Can everyone hear me?
I can, Liz, Council Flaherty.
I can hear you. You're good.
Excellent.
I'm great.
Thank you, Councillor Arroyo. Councillor Flaherty, would you like to make some opening remarks?
Just very briefly, thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate you lifting up, for a number of our morning calls, which is just to have a plan, a summer plan for our youth. Talking to a lot of the nonprofits who are struggling right now because of the fundraising piece of it, particularly a lot of them in their spring fundraising efforts and their spring galas were all canceled. So they're struggling, but we all know that once school's out, kids are going to need things to do, and if they don't find mischief will find them, as they say. So making sure that they have access to opportunity, access to summer job programs, an opportunity to make a few bucks, stay off the corners, etc., and maybe learn a skill set and get inspired. That's what this is all about. So happy to lend an ear here and also throw a shoulder into keeping as many of our kids, working this summer, and maybe even having them have a discussion about year-round jobs as well. So thank you, and look forward to the testimony.
Thank you, Councillor Flaherty. I think I've heard from all our colleagues, city councillors. So with that said, we will move on to our panelists this afternoon. The first panel is our youth panel, and we have Nikia Charles and Alondra Bodbadilla. I apologize if I've mispronounced your names. Would Nikia like to begin?
Good morning. Could you hear me?
Good morning. I can hear you. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mejia Jean Charles. I'm a youth organizer from Mattapan. I currently attend Cathedral High School, and I'm now a rising senior. Thank you. Thank you to all the counselors today who came out to listen. I recognize a few of you all through the advocacy work that I do in this city. But may I be? May I begin?
Yes, go ahead.
Awesome.
Thank you for being here.
No problem. Firstly, to answer the question about youth jobs, I find youth jobs very important in my community and in other communities. I first found out about Success Link as an 8th grader at my youth programs called St. Stephen's Youth Programs. This is located in the South End of Boston. St. Stephen's Youth Programs offers hundreds of jobs in the summer and throughout the school year, since it is an after-school program during the school year, and it's a summer program throughout the summer. In the past, we had like 6 sites throughout the city, and hundreds of little kids from the city, teens ages from 12, 13 they participate in the JCIT program, junior counselor in training, and also you have teens like me that either committed to community organizing or committed to lead counselors in training. And then you also have your other leads that watch over all the kids. That's why I also find it important to increase the budget for students or young adults who are around the ages of 19 and 20 to also have employment from Success Link also, because at the end of the day, we're all trying to be successful. But to continue, how has Success Link impacted my life? Students like me have the opportunity of having jobs at a young age and saving up for colleges or any of the expenses that we have to make do of. In my experience, I've had to pay phone bills. I know other students have had to pay phone bills, but we also, as the city of Boston, we do have a great diversity in our city. So we have to keep in count of the students who have parents that were undocumented, and those bills and the jobs that we have had been a resource to our families. And because of that, Success Link has impacted a lot of families in our communities. But to continue, Success Link has helped me as an individual with paying expenses with my mom or expenses for my grandmother, because healthcare is expensive. And with the with the housing in Boston situation, we do have to deal with gentrification in our city. And a lot of students also have dealt with homelessness in this city. So it's important that Success Link and also youth jobs, youth employment, youth resources are there. And to continue, I would like to say that lots of students in Boston have dealt with poverty, and dealing with that trauma from poverty, dealing with the background of over policing, or with the background of students in your classroom having to most importantly not get eligibility to see in their next day. For me, throughout this quarantine, I lost somebody. Her name is Alyssa, just like Counselor Campbell was talking about. I also see Rashad here. Me and Rashad, your niece Winter, we played basketball on the same team. And Alyssa was also on that team. So youth jobs is very important to me. And also youth mental health wellness. Through St. Stephen's, us students were able to get paid during quarantine, but it consisted of virtual programs. So we had mental health checkups, we had college and career developing, because most importantly, that helped me with, since I was a junior and I'm rising, I needed SAT help since my school couldn't give it to me that often as they wish they could. And through St. Stephen's, I got the college and career. I met with professionals that were in the interest of my job. I also met with other team staff who were able to give me daily checkups throughout this mental health wellness, because we don't have that much teachers checking in on their students. So it's very notable that you have a student that can contact at least a mentor or somebody else that they can talk to. Continuing along with that, we also had like social events. We had Netflix parties where students could just have the time to just take a breather, because this is quarantine. A lot of people are stressing out. But to just make sure that our students are doing well at home, and to always check up on them. Continue along with my youth journey. I am a community organizer, and through Success Link, it has allowed me to continue my passion. Right after 8th grade, when I finally went into St. Stephen's Youth Program as a lead-in trainer, I thought I would want to work with kids, but it ended up being me that I wanted to end up helping kids in their futures. So as a youth organizer, I'm proud to say that I've worked throughout on the city budgets, as if, like, for example, when I was a freshman in high school, there was the Student Opportunity Act, which many of you know. Until junior year, that bill was finally passed. But when I was a freshman in high school, it was me and a lot of other young organizers committing our days after school to make sure to go to the State House, talk to our senators, like Senator Sonia Ching Diaz, in supporting her. But that was like on a daily. So this is a passion of mine, making change for my communities. Yep. Yes, I love helping students, but I also love making change for their futures, and that's why this job is also important to me.
Very good. Nakia, I have to stop you there. I'm okay. Limiting comments to 5. I'm sure we'll come back and ask further questions. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Thank you for your testimony. I'd like to now go to Alondra.
Hello. Good morning.
We're trying to keep everything moving along, so can you limit your comments to 5 minutes? I've got a timer here, and I'll start it. Thank you.
No, of course. Thank you to the chair. My name is Alondra Bobadilla. I'm the City of Boston's Youth Poet Laureate, as well as one of Julia Mejia's youth liaisons. I'm a resident of Hyde Park. I go to Fenway High School, and I'm a rising senior. I think it's important, to open up Success Link as well as other, summer programs to a broader age range. I think as of right now, from what I remember, I haven't been able to get a Success Link job, but I've applied through Success Link. I believe the age range right now is like 14 to 19, something along those lines, 15 to 19. And I think opening that up, as well as providing other types of programming that are not necessarily jobs within themselves, would be incredibly beneficial. For example, mental wellness oriented programming, things that would allow our youth to be able to speak to other youth, as well as to speak to mental health professionals, people who can aid them during this time period, considering, the trauma of the pandemic itself, whether it is people who have lost individuals. I know I've lost a couple of individuals, whether it is because of violence, the rise in violence within our communities, whether it is just because of the rise in violence in the country as a whole, when we consider police brutality, how that's affecting our youth, that race trauma. When I go outside, the majority of or a lot of the people that I see working, whether it is in restaurants or in other places, are youth. The people preparing my food are youth. The people that I see protesting are youth. And I think that when we think about youth opportunities, I feel that we need to open up more, especially during this time. And I hope that because of these obstacles, we would be able to open up more opportunities as a whole. I think that we are seeing a rise in youth who are tapping into their potential, tapping into their abilities during these trying times, and that are trying to get engaged. And I think that we should definitely cater to that more, whether it is opening up more opportunities for youth civic engagement and youth activism engagement, because we're seeing that that's what they're interested in, or whether it is just providing more opportunities for them to get involved in ways that they are able, tapping in again, like I said, to their potential, to their gifts, to their talents. I think now more than ever, I know a lot of youth who are involved in things that have to do with the streets. I know a lot that are at risk with getting involved with things that have to do with the streets. And more, and especially now that there's nothing for anyone to do, it just becomes more and more difficult for them to find something to do. And I think that if we don't pay attention to them and provide them the opportunities that they need, we're going to lose a lot more youth, not necessarily just to death, but just to illicit activity on the streets. And I know that that's not something that any of us want to see. Again, thank you guys for, I appreciate being invited to speak here and provide commentary. And I'm excited to see what solutions the city have proposed on helping our youth and keeping them engaged and keeping them safe over the summer and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony, and congratulations on being the Youth Poet Laureate for Boston. I'm very impressed. I'm a poet, an appreciator of poetry, so I really am excited to hear about that. Thank you so much. Now we'll move on to panel 2 from the administration. Rashad Cope, Rufus Faluk, and Nidori Morikawa. Again, I apologize if I've mispronounced your names. Would you folks from the administration like to open up the next panel, make your testimony? I think we'll stick to 5 minutes if possible, and to keep things moving, I'll just set my timer.
Great, thank you, Chairwoman. So I will go ahead and get started, and I will turn the floor to Rashad Cope. So good afternoon, Chairwoman Breeden, Sponsor Campbell, Mejia, and President Janey, Councilor Sabi George, Flynn, O'Malley, Flaherty, and Arroyo. My name is Nidori Morikawa, and I am the Director of Business Strategy for the Mayor's Office of Economic Development. Before I discuss this hearing order, I will be remiss if I am not to reiterate the message that we have heard continuously from our mayor about the importance of youth summer jobs. Just this morning, he announced an additional investment of $4.1 million. That's $4.1 million, making our total investment into youth employment engagement to $11.9 million, close to $12 million. And this is just the city funding. And as many of you know, every year we also get state funding, the line item Youth Works. So we hope to continue to advocate with our state friends, and we hope that you will join us in advocating for funding from our state as well. So over the past 5 years, Mayor Walsh has invested in summer jobs, particularly on evaluating through our randomized control evaluation study in partnership with Northeastern University. And we want to do what works and less of what doesn't work, so that our youth can use summer jobs as a platform for future success. Our research shows that youth participating in summer jobs had improvements in soft skills. So this is what Councilor Campbell alluded to. They had increased self-efficacy, confidence. Nikia also mentioned the mentorship importance of that. So these soft skills development are linked to 30% reduction in violent and property crime. And this impact followed 18 months after the program ended. We also saw improvement in academic aspirations. We also saw improvement in job readiness skills. Councillor Mejia, you mentioned about work ethic, career exploration, and we saw a 30% increase in wages subsequent after the summer jobs program. And these impact were seen largely for youth of color. So this is very encouraging. In addition to that, Nikia and many of you have mentioned, summer jobs provide important economic benefits to youth and their families. Over 50% of youth said they use the money to help their household bills, and 1 in 5 said they use money to save for college tuition. So the impact of youth summer jobs cannot be overstated. So it is for this reason why the mayor has prioritized youth summer jobs during COVID-19, and why they will continue to be a focal point in a recovery and reopening effort moving forward for the city of Boston. So as many of you know, due to the impact of COVID-19, we expect to lose some of the summer jobs that are available in the past. So these include summer camps, daycare, some of the hospital jobs are no longer available. And we are projecting losses up to 40% from the past year. So despite this challenge, Mayor Walsh is very much committed to bringing as many young people that we've hired in the past as possible, 8,000 to be exact. Many of you have already seen the press release today, and Rashad will go into more details on what our plan looks like. So since the start of COVID-19, in order for us to close this job gap that we're projecting that we're going to lose, the city has identified hundreds of creative job opportunities, engagement opportunities for young people during COVID-19. These include jobs in our city departments, but also our partners in nonprofit, community partners. Councilor Flynn, you mentioned higher education institutions. They will all play a role in stepping up to create these jobs together for young people. We have also convened a weekly summer jobs meeting with our stakeholders that collectively we hire 8,000 young people so that our efforts can be coordinated and reach the 8,000 number collectively. So these include, many have mentioned them already, ABCD, they serve youth from 14 to 21-year-old. They're the only one that serves 14-year-old among our providers. Boston Private Industry Council that serve 16 plus BPS students, primarily in the private sector. John Hancock MLK Scholars, Youth Options Unlimited that serve primarily core gang involved young people, and our own Youth Employment Engagement department headed by Rashad Cope. We've also had a number of community listening sessions where over 400 of our nonprofit partners, residents, parents, students have come together to share their ideas on what the summer jobs can look like due to the challenges of COVID-19. So with that said, I would like to now turn the floor to Rashad Cope, who can talk in more details about our plan for summer 2020, available for any questions you have. Rashad?
Thank you very much. Thank you, Rashad.
Thank you, Midori. Councilor Bremen, hello. Thank you for having me here today, and to all the other councilors that are joining us today. Thank you for having me here as well. I'm going to be very brief so that we can just have more time to answer some of the questions that maybe that folks may want to ask today. Before I jump into our plans, I definitely want to make sure that our city councilors and our young people that are joining us today just know that we share in the sentiment, that youth jobs are important. We know youth jobs, create quality experiences for young people. And it has been our priority to make sure that we are looking at our jobs through a quality lens. And we know that youth jobs opens the door to future career opportunities as well. So our work every day is driven by the fact that we understand the benefit of youth jobs. I think myself and Rufus is here as well. Like we grew up in the Roxbury area, and we are beneficiaries of the summer jobs program through the city. And we understand the impact that program has had on our childhood, thus the impact it has on young people today. So definitely want to make sure that is mentioned, that we do share in that sentiment. Nikia, Alejandra, thank you both just for your advocacy. Your voices are critically important, as we continue to discuss youth opportunities across Boston. So definitely want to make sure that you all know that the city, and just folks in your communities appreciate you, appreciate the voice that you guys are lending on behalf of other young people in your schools and in your neighborhoods. So thank you both for your continued leadership and advocacy. In terms of our summer jobs plan, so our summer jobs plans, will be happening pretty much in 3 areas. It will be virtual and online engagement. There will be safe on-site employment opportunities that will continue to be guided by public health guidelines and social distancing. And then there will be opportunities connected to summer learning. So as Midori mentioned, we anticipated a gap in jobs, and this was probably early April. We anticipated there would be a gap or a loss in summer jobs. So we have worked very collectively across the board with the intermediaries that have been mentioned already, and in partnership with Office of Workforce Development, who's played an incredible role in helping us really think about how do we fill this anticipated gap in jobs. So what we're looking at for this upcoming summer is we're looking at 5 primary bucket areas. So the first bucket area will be our standard summer jobs. So those will be the standard jobs pre-COVID-19. So those are the 150 plus community-based organizations that SuccessLink has partnered with over the previous years. Those will be the community-based organizations that PIC has partnered with, that ABCD has partnered with, that MLK Scholars has partnered with. So those standard job opportunities, a portion of them will continue into this summer. And in fact, over the last couple of weeks, we've saw more community-based organizations step up and say, hey, we didn't think we can do this before. We know we can do this now. So that will continue. And then additionally, we have worked together to create 4 new tracks of job opportunities. So the first track is Boston's Blue Shirts program. And that program is essentially to create beautification projects for young people across the city. That is a partnership with the Parks Department and Public Works. They both have stepped up to say, yes, we can support young people in summer jobs. The next track is our peer-to-peer track. The peer-to-peer track essentially will help engage young people around public relations and public awareness campaign. And the idea with that track is to put young people at the forefront of this pandemic, because we want to hear how the pandemic has impacted young people. But more importantly, we want to see how young people are helping move Boston forward and through the pandemic. The third track are virtual options. So those are virtual courses where students can learn various skills. And then the fourth track will be career and post-secondary education, where young people will engage in college credit-bearing courses across BFIT, Urban College of Boston, RCC, and those courses will focus on tech, creative economy, and human service field. So those have been the discussions that we've had thus far about summer jobs, and we're pretty confident that we are in a really good place today going into next month to make sure that we are providing opportunities for young people. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Rufus, is Rufus ready to testify?
Yes, I'm here.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for being here.
My pleasure. Good afternoon, counselors. Good afternoon, Nakia and Alondra. My name is Dr. Rufus J. Fogg, Director of Public Safety for the Mayor's Office. And largely why I'm here is just to stress the importance of a collaborative effort and collaboration internally. That's what the City of Boston, that has been our sort of foundational linchpin for all of our efforts, ensuring that internally, whether it be with BPS, BPHC, SOAR Boston, to make sure that we are helping to identify those young people who traditionally would not be aware of what current opportunities are existing for them. Those are the disengaged young people, those are the gang involved young people, making sure that we are pulling them into the system, ensuring that we are expressing and expanding our opportunities and expressing to them that they're not just individuals that we look at in the summer as nuisances, but they are young people that we view as having the most agency to address gang violence that happens within our community. So we wanted to make sure that we are wrapping our arms around them, and we're doing so in a collaborative approach. So we also have external partners, whether it be DYS or our work with the Suffolk County DA's office with their juvenile diversion program to help identify young people that are in need of additional support and also can be put through our City of Boston youth employment program. So just on our end, we're just trying to stress the fact that this is a collaborative effort. But I think one thing that we have to get to also is that I was listening to Nakia and Alondra speak, and I know Rashad could speak to this, but we were those young people 20 years ago. We were those youth advocates. We were those folks who had those summer jobs. And I won't speak for Rashad, but once I aged out of the summer job program, it appeared that the city in which I knew and loved did not wrap their arms around me to try to find a place for me, to try to find an opportunity for me to be successful. And I think in our time within this administration, we've tried to eliminate that sort of gap that exists, where we're not wrapping our arms around the talent that we do have, and then the talent that the city has sort of poured into then goes to other cities to be successful. So I think as a group, how do we get to the point where our homegrown talent could feel like there's an avenue for them to be successful, that once they go to school or come back to school or age out of high school, we have real pathways for them. So I think with the career tracks that Rashad laid out, was showing how we're sort of morphing our thinking to more career paths and not just busy work around summer jobs, but around how we building real substantive skill sets and helping our young people figure out what their place in this city is going to be. So in terms of the Office of Public Safety, we're more in a supportive role around this employment, but we're making sure that we're helping to pull all of our internal and external partners together to make sure that every young person, not just the ones who are attached to community-based organizations or attached to other groups, have access to the jobs, but those young people who aren't currently engaged also have those accesses. So that's our efforts, and I'm here to answer any questions in particular around public safety or any of our sort of approaches that we're sort of initiating during the summer.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I think I think we should just pause now and give the city councillors an opportunity to ask questions of the two panelists, of the folks on both panels. So I will start at the top. Councillor Campbell, have you any question for the panelists?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Braden, and thank you all for the testimony and your hard work, of course, and thank you to the young ladies for your powerful testimony and for participating. I wanted to thank you at the beginning. I neglected to do that, so my bad. Really appreciate you guys taking the time to speak candidly about this work and how important it is, but also more importantly, to share just what's happening with you as young people during these really hard times. So thank you. Some quick questions, and I'll just ask a few and then sort of can wait till next rounds. On the survey that went out, because we haven't seen that yet, just curious, how many employers were surveyed? What did that survey sort of capture? How is it useful to you guys in your plans for the summer and the fall? The second is, any updates on the age range piece and sort of expanding opportunities for those who are older, also for those who are gang involved, right? Rufus, we've been talking about that quite a bit. What does expansion of the program to different demographics look like? The mental health piece, Councilor Mejia talked about it, is critical. We've been separately, in partnership with Councilor Sabi George, talking about the mental health piece and expanding access for providers to reach our young people in particular. What are employers doing in that space, if anything at all? How might they work in partnership with you guys, as well as the Health Commission? Sort of that intake process the check-in piece, not just once, but throughout the summer? What does that look like? And then my last question, my fourth one is, there's Rashad, you mentioned the 120 plus organizations as a percentage that are like, yes, let's come back. And I think they had to sort of assess what they could do. Curious what that percentage is. And so of that percentage that are returning, are we meeting the needs of our young people? Where might be the gaps be? There might be 100 young people requesting jobs. Can you speak a little bit to those gaps and what those percentages might be? And I can wait for the next round. Thank you.
Sure. So, Midori, if you want to just tackle, if you have any of the data from the partner survey, I'll kick that back to you. So I'll kind of just jump down to kind of the last 3 or so questions. And then if you have any of that data, Midori, you can probably share that. I think that would be helpful. So very quickly, in terms of just job opportunities for, just proven rich young people, as Rufus mentioned, we are working with SOAR, so there are some job opportunities, Council Campbell, that SOAR will be hosting. I can get you that exact number, but we have been intentional about making sure that we are supporting the efforts of the BCYF SOAR program. And then we are also providing jobs to the Community Service Bureau through Boston Police Department as well. So there are some job opportunities in which some of those folks in Community Bureau are connecting with young people to engage them in summer opportunities. So I think that's that question. In terms of the mental health, I'm not sure if you guys are aware that the Mayor's Office of Recovery Services, they actually, they have this really incredible initiative. It's called the Cope Code Challenge. The Cope Code Challenge, it's a curriculum that helps engage young people to deal with stress, and to deal with mental health challenges. So, we're working with them to see how we can incorporate that into the summer jobs program. And then, in terms of the number of partners, yes, 120 or so partners, we've closed that gap, and some of those partners have come back. Council Campbell said, hey, we can take on more young people because, we're going to be providing virtual work as well. So our original number was about 179 before COVID, and it's closer to about 150. I can get the exact number from Tia Lyons, who's our manager of our youth employment program, but it's closer to about 150 in terms of those CBOs that said that, yes, we can continue to support this summer. So that gap has closed significantly since the beginning of April.
Great, and I can respond to the question on the survey results. So we got over 200 responses from employers, many of them nonprofits. We've gotten some from private sector as well. And this was distributed, I think, early April, I want to say, when this whole COVID-19 was sort of ramping up. And we came together, ABCD, PIC, MLK Scholar, YOU, and said, we have to come up with a contingency plan, right? Because we were all committed to summer jobs program. We want to do as many engagement opportunities as possible, but what would be the barriers where the city can help, how many jobs we can project to lose, and the 40% number that I mentioned earlier of the loss, that's directly came from the survey, right? We just flatly asked, like, how many jobs are you able to provide for young people this summer? And we saw a reduction in 40% of the jobs they said that were not available. The other questions that we asked was, around, what would be helpful, in terms of support for remote work. So a lot of the things that came out of that was, they needed guidance on sort of best practices on engaging on people, during virtual work. They also need access to technology. So Chromebook, Wi-Fi, right? Asked around if BPS students can continue to keep the Wi-Fi Chromebooks, which we believe they can continue over the summer. So we're happy to share the survey results with you. And then if you have any questions, we're happy to answer further questions.
Thank you.
Okay, I was gonna.
Rufus, do you want to add something, and then I'm done? Thank you, guys.
Speak to your older population. I know we sat in a meeting around this time last year, just showed the median age of the homicide victims are about 30 years old. And since then, we have sort of really tried to be intentional about ensuring that we were increasing opportunities for that 24 plus population, recognizing that those same individuals that we worked with in 2006 when they were 16 and 17 still were having issues around trying to get their lives on track when they were 29 and 30 years old. So that was, again, with the existing program in Operation Exit, but it was also with increased funding that came from BPD and some of the sort of grant opportunities that you had that you worked on in terms of with the council. And we've also talked about how do we expand on our existing Operation Exit program to be more of a year-round program. And that's what sort of the things that we're looking for also. But it's still a priority. We still see, we just had a young man who was shot and killed, who was 32 years old. A young man who was one of those guys we were working with in 2007, 2006. So we recognize that when we talk about youth and young adults, we have to sort of expand upon that and recognizing that a lot of our under 30 and early 30-year-old population still needs a level of assistance and support that we need to be intentional about providing. So we've gotten better at it, but there's still a lot more work that we need to do with that age population. But again, with Operation Exit, through our partnership with SOAR Boston, our partnership with some of our external partners, so we are working with ROCA and Inner City Weightlifting to make sure we're providing more opportunities, employment opportunities for that age population that's sort of aged out of our city programming. So we have a pilot program like that coming that's going to be launching this summer also. So we're trying to be innovative, but again, this is something that is a Herculean task, but we're trying to chip away at it.
Very good.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Counselor. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. President Ginny, have you any questions for these panelists at this stage?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So I wanted to start where the young people left off, and we heard, over and over again, the need for additional opportunities. So if one of them may want to speak to that, is one additional opportunity the age issue, just to clarify? I don't know if our young people are still with us.
What was that question?
So the second panelist, I think it was Alondra, spoke to the need for additional opportunities. She repeatedly mentioned opportunities. Was one of those on? Like expanding the age beyond 19? Is that what you mean when you talk about expanded opportunities? Is that one example?
Yes, that's one of the examples.
And currently, our system goes to 19 for all of these programs and jobs. Either Dr. Falk or Mr. Cope could answer.
Sure, Councilwoman Janey, I can answer that. So the Success Link program, which is the youth jobs program that's funded by the city, the age for that program is 15 to 18 for the youth job. So typically, over the last 5 years, we provided roughly about 3,000.
Is there another opportunity beyond the youth job?
Hello?
Mr. Cope, is there another opportunity that expands beyond the 8?
Yep, so
I'm asking a follow-up question.
Yep, so we also.
So beyond the 18, the 15 to 18, is there then that same organization?
Yeah, so there's jobs for youth between the ages of 19.
Madam Chair, I don't know what's happening. Thank you.
We can hear you, and Rashad is attempting to answer your question. Are you able to hear him?
Yes, but there are these long pauses, so I don't know what to make of them. Is that just an awkward pregnant pause because the answer is not there, or is it technology? So I just wasn't clear.
It's a tech delay.
It's a little tech delay.
It's a tech. Okay. Well, I'm going to try to move it along because I don't want to waste all my time on technical difficulties. I am very interested in expanding the age. I'm also very interested in having a breakdown of how many of these jobs are just summer versus how many extend throughout the school year, a breakdown by race, language, and neighborhood. And then to the point of the older folks who are still in need of services, I want us to do more reflection on the intervention and prevention that we're doing, Because if we're doing it right, 10 years later, they shouldn't still need this. And so I want to make sure that we are taking the time that we need to reflect and to figure out how to adjust and learn in terms of our processes. And I think one concrete thing is expanding the age beyond 18 or 19. That could help set folks up for future success. But it is not going to be a continuum where we're able to kind of take people through all the way through their adult lives. So the more that we can get it right with young people when we have them and interrupt whatever cycle of poverty or violence or trauma in their lives and create new opportunities instead, I think the better off we'll be. I would like a breakdown of what we currently do, though, Madam Chair, from the administration. That would be great in terms of how many are summer, how many extend beyond into the school year, and what the breakdown is by neighborhood, race, and language. If that's not available in this, that would be great.
Rashad,
And then I'll have some.
Thank you, Councillor Jenny. Rashad, is that something that you can provide for us?
Yes, we do have that data. And very quickly, just to respond to the age. So we do provide job opportunities to young people between the ages of 19 to 24. The young people on the call have asked for an increase in those numbers. Those jobs typically have been about 200. Those are increasing this summer as well. And then back to the 14-year-old population, because I know that was a question that was asked earlier. You know, Midori mentioned that ABCD does provide job opportunities to the 14-year-old population. And on our previous budget call, I mentioned that BCYF has an incredible Super Teams program, which is also a pre-employment program for 14-year-olds that does provide paid stipends. So our conversation is, you know, how do we expand those opportunities? Because there's an incredible model that is already in place to support the 14-year-olds from a pre-employment lens. But yes, we can get,
and I'm an
ABCD data
ABCD
as well.
Just for the record, I am an ABCD kid. My summer jobs were ABCD jobs when I was a kid. So thank you, Madam Chair. I'll save further questions for the next round.
Thank you. We'll move on to Councillor Mejia. Have you any questions for the two panels at this moment in time?
I do.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you. So just really quick, I really do appreciate having the young people here representing the youth perspective and that voice. So thank you so much to you both for so eloquently keeping it 100% about the issues that we need to be looking at. I'm also curious, I think about young people who are not here as well. I think about some of my experiences when I did youth development work back in the day. You know, there were a lot of young people who were not engaged in this conversation or were not tapped into for employment, often because they were quote unquote either out on the streets dealing, but we found ways to engage them in work. So just curious about what the outreach strategy looks like in terms of engaging those higher quote unquote to engage youth. Just really curious about those who are not here and how we can make sure that they're being plugged into employment opportunities. And then I'm also curious, and I do agree with Dr. Falk in terms of young people, the older adults. And what I have seen is that sometimes, even when you're 30, if you experience trauma at 16, you're showing up as a 16-year-old, even though you're rocking it in a 30-year-old body, right? So I think to President Council Janey's point in terms of what are we doing and how are we assessing previous strategies and work, I'd love to know what reflections and what systems have been put in place to evaluate work that was done before you, Dr. Folk, because I know a lot of these things happened before you, but just wondering how you're utilizing those lessons to kind of inform your thinking moving forward. And then the last question that I want to get some clarity on is that while I do appreciate summer youth employment and year-round employment opportunities, I'm also curious about entrepreneurship programming for young people. This that I'm holding right here was produced by young people from the Jackson Man Community Center, and they were selling these here not too long ago before we got the shutdown. And so I'm just really curious about what employment strategy are we looking at so that young people can also have opportunities to become the next wave of entrepreneurs, whether it be opening up their own small restaurants, creating different types of products that they can sell. What does that employment strategy look like to build entrepreneurship programming? And that's it for now.
Thank you.
Rufus, do you want to just tackle the first part of that, and I can just tackle the
Yeah.
last part? Great.
So, Councilman Mejia, you're spot on just in terms of making sure that we are engaging that population that oftentimes is the most disconnected population. So that's where we lean on our internal agencies. So we lean on SOAR Boston, which is our former shoot worker program. They have the caseload. They are working with the young people from those areas that have the highest proclivity for either somebody to be shot or to shoot somebody. So that is, I don't have to name the neighborhoods. We know what neighborhoods those are. That is our working with BPHC and the SSYI program that also identifies those young people, again, most likely to be shot or to shoot someone. We have our external partners, which is ROCA, and that's Inner City Weightlifting. Again, we are working. Previously to this year, a lot of the work that was being done in silos. We will all work with our population. We will rarely converse about who's doing what, who knows who, but that has all changed. So we're in weekly conversations with those entities, along with DYS, who oftentimes has that group of young people who are on that next wave of young people who are going to be the most active gang involved. DYS has them early, and we're engaging with them while they're in those locked facilities. Suffolk County DA's office, juvenile diversion program, that's where we're getting our young people at as well. So we're making sure that we're engaging those people with our external partners, but we're also doing the old-fashioned stuff in this age of COVID-19, physical distancing, recognizing the young people that we serve aren't concerned about COVID-19 as their first priority. They're more concerned about getting shot, and that's their main priority. So they're still going to convene at the parks. They're still going to be present on the neighborhood. So we're still making sure that we're out there and present. So it's some of that old-fashioned on-the-ground work. I'm an old man now, but I still do some of that work, making sure that we are present in those communities. And I agree totally that we are engaging that group, because oftentimes that group gets overlooked as being, they're too far gone. We recognize that they're an asset if we're trying to sort of end this cycle of retaliatory gun violence. So we're making sure we're present, but it's a collaborative effort. And just in terms of, just real briefly, just in terms of lessons, taking lessons on what happened when I was a kid, when I got overlooked for certain opportunities, recognizing that Rufus in 2020 might still get overlooked. So how do we make it sure that there isn't another young person who might not be on anyone's radar, who might get overlooked for an opportunity? So we're trying to be very inclusive around the way in which we dispense our services and resources.
Thank you. And Razan, when you answer your question, I also just want to look at what your trauma-informed practices are looking like in terms of employment opportunities for you.
Yeah, so Councilman Mejia, in terms of the entrepreneurial focus for youth jobs, there are many of our partners that have programming for opportunities around entrepreneurship that essentially we're funding those young people that are participating in those programs. So for example, Jackson Man Community Center has been incredible around entrepreneurship. Some of those young people, are funded through the Success Link program, so they can get paid to do the work at Jackson Man around entrepreneurship. That's the same goes for Artists for Humanities, where some of our funding is going towards Artists for Humanities, where young people, they're developing art projects, and those art projects are being sold, to businesses, and that's an entrepreneurial focus as well. We've just entered into a partnership with the Possible Project, who moved in. They're located in Cambridge. Now they're here with Natanya. So they'll be hiring probably about 25 young people this summer. And they have an incredible focus around entrepreneurship as well. And then lastly, we just explored a conversation with Midori Shop and Small Business Development around how do we connect young people to main streets and small business opportunities through youth jobs program.
The trauma-informed piece, just in case I don't want to be checking that in, the trauma-informed practices as part of your employment opportunities, what's that looking like, and how are you measuring success on that front?
Yeah, so in terms of trauma-informed practices, I don't think that we have a direct program in place. I think for us, it's thinking about training for our sites, training for the folks who are working with young people, and bringing folks in like BPHC, Year Up, who's doing the work, so they can train our partners. Because we don't host the kids, our partners host the kids. So for us, it's a training piece, and how do we provide more training to the folks who are employing the young people?
Thank you for that. And Councilor Breeden, I'm also just curious because Dr. Gale is on the phone, and I'm not sure if you noticed that she was also one of the panelists, and if we're going to be able to ask her some questions, because she is a clinician and works with young people. So I just want to make sure that we get that mental wellness voice into the mix.
That's in the next panel. I will, in the interest of, let's see how we're doing for time. In the interest of time, are there any of our other councillors who have a question to ask at this point in time? We can move on to the third panel if you have no questions now, or if you want to hold your questions to later. We have still got another panel to hear from.
I do have.
I have a question.
I see. Put your little blue hands up. Thank you. Councillor Bach.
Thanks so much, Councillor Breeden. I just wanted to ask quickly to Rashad. So am I right in understanding what's your total number of Success Link jobs proposed for the summer?
So I'm sorry, for this upcoming summer?
Yeah, for this upcoming summer.
Yep, so the total number of Success Link jobs will be just above 4,000. So that's some of the funding that the mayor announced today is going towards increasing that total number of Success Link jobs.
Okay, and so, and normally we've been at what, was it 3,300?
Yeah, we've been at 3,300, but that also includes those 219 and 24-year-old positions. So that's correct. That's correct.
And you're increasing those, how much are you anticipating increasing those by, the supervisor positions?
Roughly about 200. So it will go from 200 to about 400.
Okay, great. So we're doubling the jobs for the 19 to 24-year-olds within Success Link. And then in terms of getting to that 8,000 number, because I remember when you sent us the when you sent us an update back in early May, you were trying to project, but you didn't have all the survey data in yet, kind of how many jobs we were going to lose. So it sounds like if Success Link is coming out at 4,000, you must have gotten some more of those jobs back from the private side than you were anticipating in early May. Is that fair?
We've gotten more of our CBO partners that originally said that they probably couldn't do it early April, and now they say, yes, we can do it. We have a plan in place. So we've, so those are the jobs that we've gotten back, not so much from the private sector. I'll let Midori speak more about the private sector because she has more knowledge around that area. But definitely from our CBO, and more CBOs have said, yes, we can take on more young people. We can actually do some jobs this summer.
Yes, Rashad is correct. The CBO partners have stepped up and are taking more young people. And for private sector, we're down by 38%. So we're still close to the 40% in terms of number of jobs that they're available compared to last year.
So a lot of the additional jobs we're doing on the city side are substituting for the private sector job loss.
Correct. We're picking up the. Yep.
Okay. And I know that I remember in the budget hearing, we discussed the fact that typically our year-round jobs get funded out of kind of what's left over when the dust settles from the summer jobs. I know that the advocates have been pushing for an increase on that front as well. And so I'm sort of wondering where your guys' headspace is on the year-round jobs.
I think to be fully transparent, our focus has been really just trying to get this summer off the ground. We probably haven't had any conversations about our year-round jobs. I'm pretty sure once we're able to at least get young people hired and get them started in July, then we can begin to turn our focus towards what's happening for the school year.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I would just want us to be careful that, because if some of our money is operating and some of it is CARES Act, since I know a lot of our year-round jobs will take place in next calendar year, just thinking about how we arrange our money such that we're maximizing what we've got left over for year-round jobs. That's just a budget flag. But yeah, and do you guys think, I mean, do you think we're on track in terms of, I know we talked at the budget hearing also just about the the proportion of our jobs that we're usually able to fill. What's your guys' prognosis about kind of actually getting all 4,000 of these Success Link jobs filled?
I would say that we probably need more young people to apply. Currently, we have 5,700 young people that have applied to the jobs as of today. Typically, we see just over 6,000 youth applicants on any given. So definitely just getting more young people to apply to some jobs will be very helpful.
Okay, so, but we're at 5,700 and we're usually at like 6,000. So we're pretty close to where we usually are, but we're not over.
That's correct.
Great. All right, well, I have more questions, but in the interest of time, I know the chair is trying to move us through. So thank you so much. That was helpful. And I'm excited that, that we're investing more money in this and also I've definitely been concerned about this issue of supervisor jobs, for older youth as well. So excited.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Essabi George.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So one of the things, and Councillor Bach just sort of extended upon that conversation that I'd like to make sure that we're having, whether it's now or through the next panel, is this idea of that second batch of jobs. So I think we have a pretty good handle on the amount and quality of jobs for that younger age group. It's the older kids that I'm concerned about having not just more of those little kid jobs, but more of the higher quality, deeper experience, higher pay positions for that older batch of kids. And I think that it almost has to be in many ways separated out. So we're not just simply talking about 14 to 22-year-olds, because 14 to 20, there's loads of changes within those years. And we think about those early teen years and those older teen and young adult years, where our kids, our young people, especially in that 18 or 19 to 22-year-old range, really need a very different experience, and one that will build skill, build resume, build future consideration for career tracks. So for me, it's a really important piece, and one that I think we need to separate out of sort of just the simple summer jobs conversation, because it does relate to school year, it does relate to year round, and it is, I think, something that needs to be evaluated. It's more expensive, because I think that as a young person ages with us and follows us through employment opportunities, that they should have an opportunity to earn more money and increase the skill set that they're utilizing, exposed to, building, all of that. So I don't know if this is the proper panel to discuss that. I think it might be, but I'd like to understand what that could look like, what that should look like, and how much money that might cost us.
I would say just a quick response, Councilor Essabi George. I agree with you. We need to be more intentional about creating career pathway opportunities for that older population. I think Rufus touched on some of that in terms of his remarks. I do believe that this is the right folks. There may be some other folks that we can bring to the table as well to kind of have this conversation, who's doing some of that work for the older population across the city. So I agree with that, and hopefully we can probably have that conversation pretty soon.
Can I just add that I agree with you, Counselor, and I think we really have to talk about the narrative around that population and really talk about and discuss the importance of talent retention within the city of Boston, how much talent we actually lose. And if we could sort of make that be the push about how do we, because we've invested so much in these kids. That was one of the reasons why I came back, because I felt like so many in the city of Boston invested in me. I had a duty to come back. So what are we doing to sort of celebrate and sort of highlight the talent that we do have, but also create an opportunity for them to the next position. So while we've sort of trained them up, they can sort of make sure that they are sort of fulfilling that next group of workforce. So just around narrative, talk about talent retention, talking about being intentional around finding what pathways would be the best ones for them. I think that as a group, we can sort of change that narrative and sort of express the importance for Boston's best and brightest to stay here and feel like they have a place here.
I think that's really important work. And I think that it should also involve the Office of Strategic Partnerships, because I think about some of our institutions, especially in this city. I went to BU for free because my dad worked there. And while he was a security guard at BU, he earned 2 master's degrees for free. So when we're looking to also utilize some of those relationships, a young person just leaving, graduating from one of our high schools, if we can find employment in some of these larger institutions that may have college tuition reimbursement, some of our for-profit private sector employers may have tuition reimbursement opportunities. Those are all really possibly, I think, amazing relationships for us to have, and your work should be a part of that. I think it's still the Office of Strategic Partnerships, but there's a lot within the city and through partnership for our young people and that slightly older age group, because I think that's an important demographic that we're paying attention to. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Dr. Fogg and Rashad and Midori for being here with us, as well as the young people, Alondra, and I think it was Nakia that also testified before. I'm here for the duration. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Councillor Sabi George. Councillor Flaherty, would you have your hand up to ask a question?
Yes. Thank you, Madam Chair. Obviously, I just want to thank the panel and obviously the youth for testifying and for shedding some light on some of the things that they're seeing. I wanted to, I guess, quick question. I want to understand how the Hope Line is going to work this year, number one. Two, I've been a long time and consistent advocate for year-round jobs. I think that summer jobs are good, but I think that year-round jobs are better. And there's got to be a way for us to, particularly with the older kids, making sure that we're seizing the opportunity if we're going to expand the age group to be able to provide opportunity for them, that we sort of have a different lens there and that we try to connect them maybe to maybe it's a stepping stone to another bigger opportunity. It could be in a specific trade or profession or an industry. But I think we want to make sure that we're doing the best we can to kind of put them on the right trajectory. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. How does the Hope Line work? Continued advocacy for year-round jobs and more with a focus on the older kids if we're going to extend the age, that we do something a little different with those kids. Red Shirt programs, I grew up all around the Red Shirt programs, and they provided a resource and a paycheck for kids, but wasn't a lot of thought put into that other than you're picking up and cleaning lots. And there was a program at the time called Clean It or Lean It. And if you didn't clean your lot, your vacant lot, the city would either lean it or the city would provide the Red Shirt labor to clean those fields and those lots. And then in turn, they would charge the landlord or the owner of the property to pay for it. So we've probably kind of moved beyond that. But if you think about our city, we boast the best colleges, universities in the world. Our waterfront is booming. People want to come here. It's a livable, safe city with access to intellectual capital. And we have an opportunity here to really open up doors for folks. And I want to make sure that we're doing that. And it really starts with our youth, and it starts with summer job programs that morph into, bigger and long-term opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone like to speak to the Hope Line question?
Yes, I'll speak to that. Councilor Flaherty, so the Hope Line has now been called Success Link. I think I remember the Hope Line many years ago. And I think the Hope Line has changed. I think it changed back in 2011 or so, somewhere around there. So it's been close to a decade since it's transitioned from the Hope Line to Success Link. The way that the Success Link program works is typically the partner organizations that are working with young people express interest in hosting youth jobs. After those young people express interest in hosting youth jobs, our team here in our office reviews those applications, we post those jobs, and then we open up the Success Link application for young people across the city to review all the job openings and be able to apply. And what that does is that gives young people the opportunity to apply like it's a real job, and be able to apply to jobs that they are interested in. So that's how the process works. And then our partners, of which the young people are applying to their jobs, we give them access to the city's ISIMS platform. And those partners are able to vet the young people, vet their resumes, see who they are, and they are able to begin to make selections of young people who we then hire those young people here in our office through our employment program so they can begin work. So that's a little bit about how the program works.
Thank you. In the interest of time, I will move on to Councillor Flynn. Have you any questions?
Thank you, Councilor Braden. Thank you, Rashid. Thank you, Rufus. One issue I've been focused on as a probation officer for 10 years is Corey, people with Corys. It has a terrible impact on getting employment, as we all know, even kids age 17, 18 on. Is there anything that we can do as a city to make it easier for people, young people that have a Corey? Can we do anything to get them into the workforce, get them into a training program? And a Corey shouldn't, eliminate someone from getting a decent job, getting into a decent career or a training program. Again, I know you guys are doing great work on that effort, but is there anything else we can do to help some of these people that do have a Corey?
So actually, in partnership with Office of Workforce Development, our reentry program, SOAR Boston, and Office of Public Safety, we're actually having a sort of like a webinar sort of series going to be this Wednesday, discussing that very issue about Corey and the impacts on our workforce, and talking about the opportunities for expungement, the opportunity to get Corey sealed, because you're absolutely right. That is one of the main obstacles for a lot of the population that I know that I serve, and some of the population that Rashad serves, them having a record and them not being able to sort of access some of those career opportunities. But I think there's also a step that we can take too with some of those external partnerships that we may have as a city, to sort of say, okay, you guys are hiring folks, can you make sure that you hire a certain population of individuals with Corey? So I think there's ways that we could be innovative, but I want to say that I get the information to you and to all the other councils about this conversation we're having on Wednesday about the impacts of Corey and what other opportunities we have around employment. I'll make sure I pass that information to you. So we're thinking about it, but you're absolutely right. It's a main obstacle for a lot of the work that we're trying to do with that older population.
And Councilor Flynn, just to add to Rufus's comment, the Success Link program has not and typically does not turn away young people that have Corys. What we typically do is, if we find, because we do run Corys, and if we find that a young person does have a Corey, we look to make sure that we're placing them with one of our partner organizations that are able to work with court-involved, gang-involved young people. So that has been something that's been very important for us, to make sure that isn't a barrier to young people participating in the summer jobs program. And it typically has not been, at least definitely over the last 5 years, since I've been in my role.
Councilor Braden, that's all the questions I have. I just want to say thank you to the panelists for not just being here, but for the great work they're doing for the residents of Boston as well.
Thank you, Councillor Flynn. I will keep moving. We will go on to panel 3. We have Gail Crump-Swaby from Springfield College, Boston. We have Neftar D from Roxbury Environmental Empowerment Project. We have Susan Young from Youth Violence Prevention Task Force. I think, let's just check everyone's here. Susan here. And then we have Desia. So I understand someone may have a time limit. I'm not sure which of these panelists have a limited time. Someone said that you may have to be finished by 2. Is there anyone here with a time limit right now for this panel? Okay, can you raise your blue hand if you do? Okay. Let me start with Gail Crump-Swaby. Would you like to make your testimony, Gail?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Thank you for being here. Yes, I can hear you very well.
I'm trying to get my video to show, so let's see if I can do that too as well. but I think my video is showing, I'm not quite sure. So good afternoon, Councilor Braden and the rest of the councilors who are here. My name is Dr. Gail Crump-Swaby. I am an associate professor for Springfield College, and I also have a group practice that provides clinical treatment in the city of Boston, primarily located in Dorchester of Massachusetts. I have had several years of experience working with young people. One of my first, one of many jobs within the city of Boston was working for a particular health center, the Dimmock Center, where I ran a youth program for primarily prevention, where we provided, as a matter of fact, employment for many young people. And I remember specifically one year when I was in that program, there was a high number of violence in the city of Boston. And at the time, Mayor Menino had provided funding to the Dimmock Health Center. And actually, we, in a matter of 2 weeks, we hired 300 young people to work within on the Dimmock Health Center campus and provided work opportunity. So not only did we provide work opportunity, the other thing we did was provide social emotional wellness and well-being for those young people too as well. So I am here to support in any way possible the importance of course, employment as a way to help young people stay healthy, and to provide them with any type of employment that will support their economic well-being, but also their social and emotional well-being, their concept of self, connectedness, coping ability, amongst many other things. One of the other thing is that specific effective cognitive and behavioral skills for young people play a large part in a young person's personal and social success. So providing opportunities for employment, especially in times like these. Many young people are affected by trauma, stress, and anxiety. And anxiety, as we know, is associated with a number of undesirable intrapersonal and interpersonal characteristics. And anxiety can lead to chronic stress. So we as the adults, as a way to help reduce stress and anxiety that these young people are already experiencing, we must do what we need to do to make it happen so that they can be employable. And while being employable at the same time, we must provide a sense of security and safety as a way to help them with their own social and emotional well-being as well. We need to teach our young people how to monitor their own behaviors, how to monitor their personal performance, and a way to help them reinforce their improved behaviors and skills. And because many of these young people may have traumatic experiences and traumatic pasts, part of having some level of employment is important to help them build on those skills that are needed to help them increase their social emotional IQs, which can also increase their school performance and also minimize personal problems. So in conclusion, it's important that we address especially our youth who are also at higher risk for a variety of problems. And risk can be associated, of course, with school problems, adolescent suicide, violence, school dropout, additional public health issues such as abuse, STIs, drug and alcohol use. Our youth need ongoing attention of professionals across all disciplines. We must employ the methods of prevention, which is to make sure that we have the funding for the employment, methods of intervention, which I have heard here in terms of business and community partnerships who will employ these young people. And of course, in our world, the mental health world, we talk about treatment. And part of that treatment includes being hired and participating in a workforce and providing them with social emotional well-being that can help to improve the lives of our young people. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. We move on to Daisy Charles. Are you able to make your testimony now?
I am, but I'm pretty sure Neptar is supposed to go right before me.
Okay, I will be guided by your advice. Neftar, you're up next. Can you speak, please?
Yes. All right. Hello, my name is Neptar. I go to school, live, and used to live in the neighborhoods of Dorchester, Mattapan, Hyde Park, and Roxbury. If you want to find me, you can find me in one of those neighborhoods. The organization I organize with is REAP, Roxbury Environmental Empowerment Project. Today's hearing is about if Success Inc. is ready for summer jobs. This year, more than ever, we need an expanded jobs program, and we tried more than a month ago to ask Success Inc. for changes, but they said no to all our demands. We asked them to hire 14-year-olds, and they said no. I think it's never too young to learn.
Neptar, my bad.
Yes.
Can you guys put up our slides, please?
Kerry, have we got the slides for Neftar?
I'm sorry, I missed the request. Can you repeat?
Was there a slide deck for Neftar's testimony?
Yeah.
To see if we could find it.
Thank you.
Here we go. There we go. Thank you. Go ahead, Neftar.
All right, so can you change it to slide 5, actually? All right. We asked them to hire 14-year-olds, and they said no. I think it's never too young for people to learn or start a working experience. They said ABCD hires 14-year-olds, but they have a lot of restrictions, including income requirements, and they don't provide as many jobs. Success Inc. needs to hire 14-year-olds. We asked them to hire 19 to 22-year-olds, and they said no. Even after Success Inc., it's hard to find a job. It's right after high school. Some people don't end up going to college or school. So providing them with a job can give them more experience for the next couple of years so they can go out and get a job. Mind you, finding a job nowadays is hard. We asked for more grants, and they said they'll think about it. Then they said no. We want you to provide more grants to community groups. So with those grants, the community can hire young people who don't fit the city's requirements. It would let organizations take work off of Success Inc.'s plate. We asked for food stipends. They also said no. Food stipends provide young people with an amount of money so that they don't have to worry about using their own money for food. Some people are occupied because there's more to life than just working, especially during this pandemic. Some people can't fulfill requirements that Success Inc. has. If we're talking basic hours, Success Inc. is usually 25 hours. If someone's working 15 hours, that cuts into their money, so they'll only be paid less. And on top of that, they have to pay for food out of their own pocket. Can you change it to slide 1 now? All right. So we also demand the decrease of the Boston Police Department overtime budget by $60 million to $20 million or less, decreasing the overall budget by 10% to $372 million or less. There are other things in this world that need to be funded, like education and shelters, but the Boston Police Department is not one. They blacklist people on their brick gang databases that is secretive and include people who don't have gang ties. The police department racially profiles people and will always be suspicious of people of color. Ever since I attended the summer leadership program in the Roxbury Environment Empowerment Project, it has changed me a lot. I have gotten to witness firsthand what my community stands for and how powerful the history behind it is. After I joined these programs, I had the courage to speak up more, especially on these issues. I looked at youth jobs differently because it turned a young person like me who used to be shy into someone with a low fire in him. And this is why I'll always fully be in favor of supplying and having more youth jobs and defunding the police department. Thank you.
Thank you, Neftar. So we will go back to Daisy Charles, I think you're next.
Yep. Thank you. I'm actually going to be using the PowerPoint as well, the slides as well.
Continue. That's correct. Fine. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So as Nettar said, we are in support of defunding the police by 10% and giving $15 million to fund 5,000 summer jobs and 1,000 year-round jobs for youth. Next slide, please. All right. So this is a chart of the city budget for the 2020 to 2021 cycle. As seen here, while youth jobs only makes 2.2% of the city's budget, 14.8% is spent on our police department. An entire 2.2% of their budget alone is allocated for overtime. So as you can see, youth jobs is the tiny yellow slice on the chart, which is like insanely small compared to the amount that police get. Next slide, please. However, despite this disparity, the city still doesn't use the whole budget allocated for youth jobs. As shown on the left graph, $1.8 million have gone unspent from youth jobs and have gone into the city's reserves. Meanwhile, $10 million extra have been spent on the police overtime budget. This money should be going into youth jobs. So we need to defund the police and police overtime and fund youth jobs instead. Next slide, please. Furthermore, in the summer of 2010, the Boston Youth Fund provided 3,300 youth jobs. And this summer, 10 years later, and in the midst of a depression, SuccessLink is promising the same amount. So since we haven't gotten any info from SuccessLink before today, this info is a little bit outdated. But this is happening despite the youth population growth and economic instability. We would also like to point out that Mayor Walsh committed in 2013 to increase funding to fund 5,000 summer jobs and 1,000 year-round jobs, and for 14 to 19-year-olds. So we are demanding this 5,000 youth jobs that was promised to us. Next slide, please. Oh, next slide, sorry. Thank you. When we tried to meet with SuccessLink to improve these conditions, we were met with much disappointment. The first time they spoke to us, they stated that they wouldn't be increasing youth jobs and that they denied the other changes requested. Though they promised to meet with us again, we got no response until 4 emails and 3.5 weeks had passed. We also asked the following questions, but no data was given. So these questions written in, well, this somewhat small script is all of the questions that we have asked SuccessLink in the past, but we have gotten no response and no data as of yet. Next slide, please. Thank you. So because of this, our organization has taken the fight in our own hands. We've made this website to have organizations sign up to receive youth for the summer and therefore to receive more youth jobs. I would also like to add on that several people, well, it has been stated several times throughout this call that not many youth jobs can be given because not many youth are signing up. But I can argue that if we were to increase the age range from 14 to 22, we can definitely have more people apply. Thank you.
Thank you. Is Susan Young on the call? Anyone from Youth Violence Prevention Task Force? Okay. So I will circle back to my colleagues and go back to the top again. The sponsors of this hearing, Councillor Campbell, have you any questions for the panelists? No.
Yes, no, I do. Sorry, Councillor Braden, I was on mute. So first of all, thank you so much to this panel, not only for the level of detail in the presentation, but also to our young people, right, for the presentation, the PowerPoint, and getting straight to the facts. I think I would like to take much of whatever time I have in this round, being mindful of the fact that it is getting late. You know, there are questions in their presentation that I would love our administration to sort of respond to, since it's rare that we have everyone at the same table. I put that in quotes, obviously. So if folks could respond to Ms. Charles and Neptar, that would be great, because I think we're asking the same questions around age, around expanding the amount of money for jobs, increasing the amount of jobs available. We're talking about the police department now. I'm sitting with 3 dockets in my committee, right? Probably that won't go anywhere anytime soon as we think about how we redirect some of those resources to what the young people are talking about. So if I would like to just sort of give my time, Councilor Braden, for some of those questions in the presentation to be responded to by the administration.
Thank you. Anyone?
Thank you.
Rashad or anyone from the administration open to make any comments?
Sure. So I can definitely respond.
Thank you,
in terms of some of the questions posed by the youth group, there were some questions particularly around funding. I think we spoke about that on our call today, and how there has been an effort on the ground to strategize around increasing youth jobs, thus, has allowed for us to increase funding to youth jobs. So some of those conversations have been answered today. In terms of the age population as well, I think we've answered some of those questions around particularly the 14-year-olds. And our strategy is more centered around, again, us having those conversations with the intermediaries that provide great opportunities to 14-year-olds, and really thinking strategically, Councilor Campbell, about expanding those opportunities. So that's the response about the age. In terms of the budget from year to year, I think it dated back to about 2016. I think, that's something that we will need to sit down and have a conversation with budget to get more information, around some of the data that's presented. We would have to make sure that it's clear data and it's accurate data. So that requires us to kind of sit down and have that conversation before we respond to some of those questions about budget from 2015 and 16. Yeah, and then there are some other questions. I mean, I can answer if there are some more specific questions, Councilor Campbell, that you will want to point to. I can definitely answer those as well. I know they were just up to the slide.
Is there currently, so I'm curious to pull apart a little bit more of the conversation this morning around, what was the number before? What is the number that we're thinking now in terms of making, what is the number that we're going to make available for youth jobs? And have we opened it up so that, maybe I missed this, I was taking notes. I guess, what are some of the updates that you heard this morning, Rashad? Because I don't know those, right? So if there's more, a larger number available now for youth jobs, that's fantastic. And I know this is not directed at you per se, right? I know if it was up to you, you would have probably a much sizable number of our budget going to these youth jobs. I know where your heart is. There's obviously, you submit what you can, and then every department, and then decisions are made, right? So I just want to be clear about that. But I'm curious what the number is looking like now, because it does relate to some other budget conversations we're going to have over the next couple of weeks as we continue to review the budget.
Yep, sure. So in terms of this summer, we typically have looked at about 3,100 jobs for youth, and about 200 of those 200 jobs for 19 and 24-year-olds. This summer, with the conversation that we've had with our partners and folks within the mayor's office, we're looking at about 4,000 or a little bit more than 4,000 jobs for young people, which is an increase. And then we're looking at close to about 400 jobs for 19 and 24-year-olds. So that's the gap. Midori talked about us filling that gap from other agencies that will not be able to provide as many jobs. That's the city stepping up and say, hey, we want to make sure that we're playing our role and we're filling those gaps, because young people, should not be, they shouldn't lose these opportunities because, other private sector, other folks are unable to provide job opportunities. So we've stepped up to work on those additional tracks to make sure that those tracks are great and they're positive opportunities in which we can engage young people in those jobs.
My last question, because I know my time is up and I want to be respectful of my other colleagues. Thank you, Rashad. Is does sort of the new numbers, I'm assuming that it doesn't close the gap, right? Is there still a gap in terms of, because we could have went from 3,100 to say 6,000, right? We could have went from 200 to 500 or to 1,000, right? Particularly for that older age range, given what we're seeing on the public safety side. So I'm assuming that it is monetary considerations that are dictating how much of the gap we can fill. So I'm curious, does this cover the entire gap? It doesn't sound like it. And is the barrier money?
Yeah, I would say that this covers the gap significantly. I think Midori can probably speak more to just some of the private sector jobs in the pick end that are still left unfilled. We're picking up some of those jobs. So yeah, I think on the city end, this is filling a significant gap that we anticipated. Midori, do you want to add anything about just the private sector gap and if this is really filling that private sector gap?
Sure. So, I think as I mentioned in my earlier remarks, we're looking at gaps of up to 40%, right? That's our worst case scenario. And that's what we projected. And we have set out, over the last 8 weeks to just find as many opportunities as possible. So at this point in time, our gap is it's closed based on our estimate right now on how many jobs that we're going to lose, both in private sectors as well as CBO jobs, right? And I think to your question, Councilor Campbell, it is also money. Money is an issue, obviously, always an issue. There's always more demand that we can, every year. But there's also an issue of jobs, right? A lot of the companies just cannot offer jobs that are traditionally available. Like the hospital jobs is a great example, right? There are anchor institutions, there are hundreds of young people every year, and they just aren't able to. They don't want to bring in young people due to COVID-19 and the risk it poses. The daycare, summer camps, they are, the governor just announced they are operating, but at the reduced capacity, right? So I think that's why we had to think outside the box and say, great, like now that these jobs don't exist anymore, right? Let's talk to our college partners. Let's talk to what other options there are for engaging young people. So the numbers will close the gap both from the private sector as well as from the YE, CBO nonprofit side.
And this is just a comment, use us. I think us on the council side are often saying to the administration, and I'll speak plainly to the mayor, use us. We all have relationships and are all advocates for a large constituency across the city. And to the extent we need the private sector to step up a little bit more, or the higher ed institutions and to step up a little bit more, I think everyone on this council and on this body would be more than happy to lend a voice, a call, a letter to say, we not only need you to step up, but to really think creatively about how you as an institution in the city can offer jobs to our young people. Understanding COVID-19, folks might be reluctant. How do we help you push more of these institutions to come online in terms of job opportunities? Use us. We're here to partner in the work too, as a way to expand opportunity, fill gaps. Happy to do anything I can with respect to that. Thank you guys again. And thank you again to our young people for participating, for showing up, and for just being remarkable advocates on behalf of yourselves, and most importantly, all the other young people who can't participate in this platform. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. Councillor Janey.
Yes, Madam Chair, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. I want to begin by thanking all of the panelists, especially our young people, for their strong, fierce advocacy. And just to pick up on some of the comments that Councillor Campbell was making, if I understand correctly, the 8,000 jobs that we're talking about fills the gap of the expected 40% jobs that would be lost in that total there, yes?
Yes.
Okay, my question would be of that 8,000, so assuming that we're gonna lose 40%, right? And so we filled that gap. But my question is, just for this summer and what we were thinking, what was the existing gap before we started, before COVID? Because do we meet each summer what we think the gap is in terms of employment? My experience has been, we've done all the partnerships that we've done, and here's the number of jobs, that it doesn't necessarily meet the gap. So that's one question. Are we clear about what the true gap is? And then the second question would be around pathways and partnerships with some other organizations that I did not hear mentioned today. And kudos to all of those who are already partnering with the city. I think that's great, but I'm interested, particularly as we're trying to create pathways, career pathways for folks. What kind of partnerships do we have with like the partnership? What kind of relationship do we have with like Amplify or the Chica Project, for example, as we are trying to do outreach, but also as we're trying to set people up for a pathway, a career pathway that goes beyond just summer employment. And then I support all of the questions around entrepreneurship that my colleague and sister in service and co-sponsor, Councilor Mejia, mentioned earlier in the first round.
Sure, so I can answer the first question in terms of the gap, and then Midori, if you want to jump in around just pathways and career sector opportunities, I think that'd be helpful. So in terms of the gap, you know, I don't think that there wasn't any data collected pre-COVID that really helped us identify that a gap existed. I think typically what we have done is we've looked at the number of applicants that have applied to SuccessLink, which is about 6,000 every summer. And we looked at the number of young people that we've employed through SuccessLink, which was close to 3,000. That 3,000 gap from 3,000 to 600 does not mean that a young person did not get a job. And I think that we have to be clear about that. That means that there were 3,000 young people that applied that did not get a job through SuccessLink, but very much so would have worked through PIC, ABCD, MLK Scholars, because we do see young people apply to multiple intermediaries for summer jobs. So I think that more data needs to be collected to speak on whether or not there's an actual gap pre-COVID. We were able to speak about the gap in April because we were able to survey partners, and we were able to at least get some data back that helped inform the actual gap that we're speaking of today. So unless we have data that informs whether or not there's a true gap that exists, it's very hard for us to say, yes, there was a gap.
I can appreciate that. Thank you for that clarification. On the partnership piece, on the entrepreneurship piece.
So I can take that question, President Janie.
Any comments for folks? And then, yeah. Thank you.
Yep. So, you know, I think as Dr. Falk mentioned earlier, you know, we're really looking at summer jobs as a talent development strategy. And that's why my office of workforce, economic development is involved in the summer jobs program. Because every year when new businesses, new companies come to Boston to set up their headquarters, you know, they're always looking, right? We need talent, right? We need a local talent to get. So that's why we invest in our evaluation to say, hey, you know, it's just more than the violence prevention strategies, right? It's building people's career, building people's aspiration and college going culture. And we really want to tap into that. And I think one of the concrete ways that, you know, I'll talk about a couple of things, you know, we've done this year is to create the college track for older youth, right? So we have 450 slots. That's 450 slots between Benjamin Franklin, Urban College, and RCC for young people to get paid to take classes, college-bearing courses in creative economy, business, and technology, right? And it's 3 college credits, and it's win-win for everyone, right? Because if they take it, if they don't like it, right, then they know they don't want to go to that career field, right? If they like it, you know, they're ahead of the game, and we paid for that. So that's one. And then I think, you know, in your regards to your question about the partnership, Amplify Latinx, you know, every year, you know, my office works closely with Boston Private Industry Council to recruit a lot of these private sector partners to take as many of the young people as they can. So we love to continue the conversation on who else we should be tapping onto to see, you know, to kind of widen that circle more.
Thank you. Can anyone speak to the entrepreneurship?
Yes, I think I can just quickly speak to the entrepreneurship. And we talked a little bit about this in responding to Councilor Mejia, that we are very much interested in supporting youth entrepreneurship. There are 4 organizations that are providing entrepreneurial experiences and opportunities through summer jobs with young people. Our funding is supporting the hiring of those young people within those organizations, but I'm pretty sure there are more organizations that are doing more work around entrepreneurship as well. But yes, it's something that we're interested in, and we will continue to explore conversations and partnerships that focus specifically around entrepreneurship.
Okay, can you hear me, guys?
Yes.
Okay, the last thing, I just want to say thank you for all of that. In terms of the breakdown that I asked in the first round, if that can be sent as a follow-up, I'm really grateful, and I leave everyone with this quote from Frederick Douglass, which says, it's easier to build strong on the front end, the better off we'll be for a strong society. So
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Janey. I'm just looking at my list of little blue hands here. Councillor Asabi George, do you have a follow-up question?
I'm sorry, I didn't know.
I beg your pardon, Councillor.
I didn't know I had to raise my hand.
No, Councillor, I beg your pardon, Councillor Mejia, you're next, and then Councillor Asabi George.
Nobody leaves Mejia in the corner here.
Oh, no.
Okay, no, seriously, thank you. I have some questions, and all my questions are for Dr. Crump-Swaby, and they're all in regards to mental wellness and trauma-informed practices. I keep going back to it because for me, that is definitely what I see as we start transitioning back to the workforce. We can't do that without really having the conversation around mental wellness. So Dr. Crump-Swaby, thank you again for hosting our weekly mental wellness check-ins with young people. We really do appreciate you being in that space. And I'm just curious if you could talk to us a little bit about some of the things that have come up in our weekly check-ins with young people, and what are some of the things that you have heard about moving into the summer as it relates to COVID. And I'm just also curious if you can help us understand how young people can monitor their own mental health. I'm just wondering what you can share with the administration and some of the things that folks who are in the workforce development field can think about in terms of monitoring our mental wellness, especially for those who are suffering emotionally and mentally as it relates to COVID and other traumas that we've experienced from generation to generation. And then lastly is, how would you define what success looks like in terms of mental wellness in the workplace?
Okay, great. Thank you, Councilor Mejia, and thank you again for allowing me to be here in this platform. As Councilor Mejia said, we have been running a weekly mental wellness check-in for the young people, and they have been doing, as a matter of fact, I co-host with the young people, and they have been doing an excellent job. And I would have to say that doing that kind of co-hosting actually improves someone's mental health and their well-being. So I just want to say to Councilor Mejia, thank you for allowing me to be a part of that platform with the young people. So what we have been hearing in terms of the regular conversations are that many of the young people are feeling a sense of isolation. A sense of isolation can also lead to depression. It can also lead to, again, increased anxiety. And of course, if they've already had any underlying issues related to any other mental health challenges, then those are expounded even more because of this COVID-19 and their inability to connect with friends. As we know, during that age group, young people have a sense of connectedness with their peers, and not being able to connect with their peers in the ways in which they are used to can be difficult. I think many times we think of young people as, connecting via social media, using their technology to do that, but they tend to connect with their social media and their technology in the presence of each other. And I think sometimes we are not aware of how that happens in terms of how they see connections. So that's some of the challenges that I am hearing from a lot of the young people, is a sense of isolation and the inability to really connect with their peers, and especially young people who may not have had strong relationships with family members or parents or the adults in their household. That can be challenging too as well, when you are in some ways, from a young person's perspective, that they are stuck in their homes with family members. So one of the challenges is that because of, again, COVID-19 and not being quite sure in regards to whether or not they'll have summer jobs, that's an additional stressor that is being added to these young people in regards to them feeling a sense of, a sense of control, a sense of loss of control, because so many of them participate in bringing financial resources to their household. And then you have, again, young people who are might have immigrant families, and even though they may have born in this country, they may have family members who are unable to work, and they provide a sense of income as well to their family members. So one of the things in terms of, I think, Councilor Mejia, you asked about what can we do as a way to help these young people feel a sense of connectedness, or what are some strategies that might be helpful or useful. I think when we are thinking about connecting young people to organizations, we need to also look at, the importance again of their social and emotional wellness. So how many of these organizations do understand the importance of trauma-informed approaches when working with not just young people, but in general, but for young people more so. So there needs to be a sense of safety for the young people to feel a sense of security and safety within the work organization in terms of where they're working. There need to be, of course, trustworthiness and transparency. Again, those of us who work with young people know they like us to keep it real, and it's important that we do that. So trustworthiness and transparency. And they also need to have some peer support too as well. So making sure that they're in organizations where they are not the only ones, but they have a sense of peer support within those organizations. And then there needs to be a sense of collaboration and mutuality among not only the organization that they're working with, but the organizations that might be partnering with each other, that there's some collaboration and there's some mutuality as we think about the trauma-informed sort of practices. And then the other piece to that is empowerment and choice. We want to raise a generation of young people who feel empowered and feel some sense of ability to have some choice in terms of where in terms of career choice and where they'd like to be employed. So that's important. And last but not least, especially amongst, within the city of Boston and our Black and Brown children and our ethnicity, we must employ a sense of cultural, historical, and gender issues within the context of trauma-informed approaches when dealing with young people. I think Councilor Mejia, I might have answered all of your questions. I'm not quite sure, but I just wanted to bring those things to our attention.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm not going to take up too much time. I do recognize that my colleagues, I see Rufus, you have your hand up. You want to say something? I know I'm not the chair, so let me just pump my brakes.
Hold on to see where we are here.
Rufus has it. Dr. Fogg has his hand up.
Not on my line.
Oh, well, my line. Could you, from the chair, do you give me permission to call upon Dr. Fogg? His hand
Hold
is
on a sec. Dr. Fogg, did you want to add to this conversation about trauma-informed practices?
Yeah, I literally just had just a question for Dr. Crump-Swaby, just in terms of how have you been able to, and this is just for my own edification as we're trying to expand upon the work that we're doing with a certain population, how have you been able to broach the conversation around trauma with Black and brown boys? Like, how have you, so just in terms of the population that we serve, is sort of, it's a difficult thing to do, to have that conversation. Just so if you had any sort of takeaways for some of the sort of successes that you may have had with that population, because the population that we serve generally is not the ones that even are going to acknowledge that they are traumatized. And most sadly, those of us who are offering those services are also traumatized as well. So just in terms of, if you have any sort of just a takeaway or something that was a best practice for you to sort of start that conversation. Is it individual based? Is it group conversation? Just something that we may be able to take away when we're talking about reaching some of that population. Thank you, counselors, for recognizing my question. Thank you.
You're welcome. Dr. Fogg, you asked a very important question, and I always preface it with this. It's not just our young people. It's not just our, the adults. It's our Black and brown communities who feel that word trauma gives a sense of negativity. And oftentimes I always talk about language, and how we use language is important. And I may not start off with the word trauma. I start off with just hearing from that young person in terms of what have been your experience when you have been walking down the street. What have been your experience when you walk into a school building, or what has been your experience when you are, interacting with people. And then once we have that conversation, that dialogue, then I put a word to it and help them to understand. So it really starts with educating folks in terms of helping them to understand what their personal experiences are, and then helping them to add the language add the language that helps them understand much better. This is what has been going on for me all my life. So that's usually my approach to it. I don't start off with the word trauma. I start off with just hearing their lived experience, and then providing them with some education around, this is what's been happening, and this is how you understand what's been happening for you.
Thank you. That's very valuable information. Thank you for sharing that. Councillor Mejia, have you concluded your questions? And I could move on to Councillor Sabi George. Councillor Sabi George.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I apologize for stepping away and not being here when you called me last. And because of that, I'd rather just watch the video and follow up with the panelists if I have additional questions. I will just say thank you to Dr. Fogg for that question. I think that it was a really great question to ask, and I'm happy that I was here to hear Dr. Krumswabi's response to it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councillor Bach, do you have a follow-up question?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I just had a couple more questions about I'm just, as a new counselor, just trying to get up to speed and thinking about kind of like, long-term, how we build out youth jobs. So I was just wondering, I have the impression, because I paid some attention to it as a young activist myself, that the youth jobs numbers used to be higher, back in the same way that our state aid went down after the 2008 recession and never recovered, that we might also, that we had a high water mark back a decade ago at youth jobs. And I was just wondering if you guys could speak to what that overall trajectory has been.
Yes, Councilor Bach, I think it will probably be best if I connect back with budget to kind of get an idea around numbers that have been reported over the last decade. Again, I've been in my role for about 3 summers. So I think what I know is, the trajectory over the last 3 years. Anything post me being in this role, I would want to make sure that I'm looking at the correct data before I kind of just share any numbers. I don't want to throw anything out there that is not backed up by the data that the city actually has.
Totally fair. Yeah, I love to get that kind of historical sweep of how many youth jobs we've had, because to me it's one of those line items that is is, if you think about where we put a marginal dollar in the city, it makes a huge impact on young people's lives. And so I'm interested in kind of thinking about how we expand that. And similarly, we'll definitely be interested in having the year-round jobs conversation and thinking about, is there a way for us to build out that program so that like we can start it earlier in the fall, that kind of thing.
Sure, yeah.
But great.
And I do say budget because I'm thinking that will be the best place to start in terms of just year by year numbers. There isn't anything that was left as I transitioned to my role. There wasn't a database, that we've had prior to me coming into this role that kept track of that information. So budget may be the best place to get that information.
Mm-hmm. And can I ask you quickly, Rashad, about 14-year-olds? So I know we've got the BCYF program. I'm blanking on its name right now. You said it earlier.
It's Super Teens.
Super Teens, right. And does that start in some capacity for 13-year-olds, or is it? It does. It does. Okay. And do you have any idea? I know it's not in your remit technically, but we've got some very eager 13-year-old 8th graders at the Tobin School. And do you know like what the summer prognosis for that is?
I don't. So Pam Leans and Commissioner Will Morales, they will probably be the best folks to connect with around the Super Teens program. Mm-hmm. And Pam is the new deputy commissioner for BCYF. So they'll be the best folks to connect with.
And do you know how many young people are in the Super Teens program? Because I'm wondering, because I know we've talked about that as being one of the reasons we start our jobs, the Success Link ones at 15 instead of 14. But I'm just sort of curious when we think about scale, like how many 14-year-olds are getting to do Super Teens and.
Yeah, so to my knowledge, over the last couple of years since I've been here, that number has ranged from about 200 to a little bit over 200 last year. And I believe they're looking at trying to find ways to expand it this summer, primarily because there will be more virtual opportunities. So there probably will be opportunities to engage more young people. But again, BCYF probably has that, they should have that data. And we can reach out to Pam and Commissioner Will Morales to kind of, get those numbers.
Okay, yeah. And my office can reach out to them too. That's great. And then I guess the one other, and I just think, the year-round thing, I'd love to have that conversation. We don't need to do it now, but just because I know there has been some unspent budget authority on the YE side in the past, and it feels like, figuring out how to get that spent. And in this year in particular, to the extent we're relying on CARES Act funding, if we can figure out how to spend that earlier so that more of it we spend in 2020 instead of 2021, and that lets us kind of expand our year-round jobs. Like, I think it's a good year to try to crack that nut around making sure we don't have unspent authority.
Yes, I agree with you as well.
But looking forward to having that conversation. And sorry, that's more of a comment than a question, but Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bach. I'm very cognizant of the time. It is 2:35 and we've been here. This is an incredibly important conversation to have in the context of COVID-19 and all the other issues that are happening in our city at this moment. So are there any other councillors who would like to make a comment? Put your blue hand up. I would like to move on to public testimony. I understand we have a video of public testimony and some written testimony. So if anyone has any other comments, please make yourselves known right now. Otherwise, I would like to move on to public testimony. Okay. Kerry, there is a video. We'll be able to play the video public testimony. Here we go. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Siri Carr and I live in Jamaica Plain, Boston. I am also a teacher in Boston Public Schools. I believe it is time to defund the police and invest in Black and Brown communities. The city has to increase funding for youth jobs to $15 million and cut the police budget from $414 to $374 million or even less, and cut overtime from $60 million to $20 million or less. I am a teacher with the young people of Boston, and I see how my students who in the school I work in are mostly students of color. They benefit so greatly from having access to summer jobs. My 8th graders in particular are definitely responsible enough to hold a paid summer job. So opening up youth programming and summer job opportunities to 14-year-olds is critically important, especially so that my students can feel some sense of empowerment over supporting their families during this difficult financial time. This is why I really think we need to put more funding to protect and expand our youth jobs, and why the police budget and police overtime needs to be cut. It is a much better use of our resources. We need $15 million to double those youth jobs, expand the months, expand the age ranges, and include undocumented young people as well, who are among my students, who bring nothing but amazing things.
Thank you. I'd also now like to move on to our next person to make public testimony. Tanakwa, are you on deck to make your comments?
Hi, can everyone hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you.
Hi.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you, thank you. All right, give me 1 second.
Just introduce yourself and let's hear what you have to say.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Yes. So my name is Taniqua Hines, and I am the Racial Justice Community Advocate at the ACLU of Massachusetts. I'm also a Black and queer resident of Dorchester. I give this testimony on behalf of the ACLU, our over 10,000 members in Boston, and my community in favor of this document. Recently, we have witnessed the murders of Breonna Taylor, Tony McDade, and George Floyd at the hands of police. And over our lifetimes, we've witnessed countless others. These murders represent the harm and trauma that happen in our community when we invest in over-policing instead of resources for our youth. The bottom line is that youth deserve an investment in their future, not an investment in policing their communities. During the pandemic, our state has experienced an unemployment rate as high as 15%. In Boston, the predominantly Black and Latinx neighborhoods of East Boston and Dorchester are among the hardest hit areas. We can only begin to understand how this has affected our Black and brown youth. For our state, LGBTQ youth are 2.8 times as likely to be homeless. Oftentimes they engage in the street economy to survive, and so they have a higher chance of interacting with police. Meanwhile, the Boston Police Department currently boasts a more than $414 million budget, which is 53 times more than the Youth Engagement and Employment Department. I'm gonna repeat that one more time. That is 53 times more than the Youth Engagement and Employment Department. This is inherently choosing criminalization, trauma, and death of our youth over their future. It's time for Boston to follow in the footsteps of cities like Minneapolis and Portland that have removed police from their classrooms. As proven by a study out of Northeastern University, summer job programs for youth improve social skills and reduce violent crime. Investing in youth jobs rather than investing in criminalization of Black and brown youth, as well as LGBTQ youth perpetuated by the Boston Police Department, ensures that we are diverting them from the juvenile justice system and empowering them with community resources. By supporting this docket, the City Council will prioritize the future of our youth. We see what happens when we empower the trauma caused by law and order. Today, we stand in solidarity with the youth who have testified and our community partners to say, let's power youth instead. And if folks are interested in seeing any of the data that I cited, it's in my written testimony that I submitted. Thank you.
Thank you. And your written testimony will also be entered into the record. Thank you for your testimony. And we're going to call on some of the other folks who are waiting to make public testimony. I don't have a list of names right here, but let's see how we go. Kerry, can you activate a microphone on some folks who are waiting for us, please?
We just have Reap here. If Reap wants to testify, please raise your blue hand and we'll hear from you now.
Thank you. Could you raise your blue hand and we will hear from you. Thank you for your patience.
Seeing no blue hand, we still have about 12 minutes of video to play. I just wanted to pause to make sure we got to hear from the testimony that was waiting. So whenever you're ready, we'll go back to the video.
Excellent. We'll go back to the video and we'll watch for anyone who wants to make live testimony as well. Thank you.
Hi, I'm coming to you today to ask that Mayor Walsh and the City Council defund the Boston Police, invest in Black and Brown communities, and fund $15 million in youth jobs. My name is Adeline Ansell, and I am a Boston Public Schools teacher. The students that I teach love their summer jobs, their side jobs during the school year. A lot of them, I work in Brighton, a lot of them work at the Oak Square Y. They go to the Boys and Girls Club and the Boston Youth Centers for Family and Youth in their neighborhood. And they work for the mayor's summer job programs. I'm asking that you cut the BPD budget from $414 million to $374 million or less, and cut overtime from $60 million to $20 million. With this money, you could increase your jobs to $15 million. Instead of policing the young people that I teach and surveilling the young people that I teach through the BPD, I'm asking that the City Council and Mayor Walsh use this money to fund jobs for these same kids. Thank you for your time and have a good day. And I hope you are able to make these decisions.
Thank you. Next up.
Hi, my name is Julia Stoller. I'm a teacher in the Boston Public Schools. Here's my BTU shirt. And I also live in Roxbury. And I think that we have to defund the Boston Police Department and reinvest that money into the communities where it seems like the only investments you make in Black and Brown communities in Boston is to the police, like building new police stations and paying big salaries to police, and not investing in the most important parts for these communities to flourish, like education. And I think especially with COVID, when we're seeing a lot of reductions in state income and presumably reductions in education, it doesn't make any sense to de-invest upstream in these lives of the students in these neighborhoods, and then just pay to punish them later in life after they've been disinvested in and their schools haven't served them what they've needed. So it's important that we take the money that we are giving to the Boston Public Police Department and instead invest in youth jobs. We'd like to invest $15 million in youth jobs for this summer so that our kids can grow up and reach their potential and make money and not even need the police to be criminalizing them because they are engaged in society.
My name is Maggie Webb, and I live in Jamaica Plain. I want to say that it's time to defund the police and invest in Black and Brown communities. The city must increase funding for youth jobs to $15 million, cut the police budget from $414 to $374 million or less, and cut overtime from $60 million to $20 million or less. The city should fund 5,000 summer jobs and 1,000 year-round jobs for youth, in particular hiring undocumented young people who are valuable members to our community. We should be investing in housing, healthcare, treatment, education, youth jobs, economic development, and support for formerly incarcerated people, particularly during the COVID-19 pandemic. It's so important that we cut the BPD budget and BPD overtime. Police departments need to be defunded to stop violence against Black and Brown people, particularly Black people that we're seeing across the nation, and Boston is not immune to racist cops. It's important to expand youth jobs during and after the COVID-19 pandemic, recognizing the economic crisis that we're in. And that's why I think we should get more funding to protect and expand youth jobs, and why the police budget and police overtime needs to be cut. We need $15 million to double youth jobs, expand the month, expand the age ranges, and include undocumented young people. Thank you.
As the country is racked in turmoil and really coming to terms with systemic racism and how that infiltrates our lives, our policy, and how we interact with others. I'm calling on you today to defund the Boston Police. The Boston Police currently has a over $400 million budget, and definitely it should be cut at least by $60 million. There's so many other uses for where this money could go, particularly to investing in Black and Brown communities and funding jobs for youth over the summer. It's a much more productive way to spend this money.
Kerry, we'll halt the video for now. I understand we have someone in the waiting room to make comments. I call on Samia Ali.
Hi, my name is Samaya Ali. Hello, I'm ready.
Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Samaya Ali. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm currently a student at the Simmons University in Fenway, but I graduated from the John D. O'Brien in high school. And I'm here today to tell you that the best thing you can do with the city's money is to actually put it into youth programs and to funding, because I genuinely don't see the purpose of funding police at least 100 times more, because the budget was like 414 million for police and around 6 million for youth, if my numbers are correct. And that was very disappointing to see that our city is investing a lot more in criminalizing youth and in making sure that we're safe, but genuinely we are not, because a lot of students do not feel safe around policemen, and a lot of Black and Brown people would rather be at work and would rather be in the community, like having community centers where we have art as a resource and where we have healthcare and like basketball programs, or just things that for recreational use. My experience with this has been that like I've seen people in my community become criminalized because of the heavy policing that has happened. And I genuinely am concerned that if we do not stop this like sooner than later, then that it will become a bigger problem. And we already know that Boston has an issue with being like the most racist city in the country. And I think this is like one way that we can remedy that. I'm currently working on an art and activism curriculum with a nonprofit center that focuses on engaging high school youth and making them think about how they can become leaders for social justice within their within their skills and within their range. So I would definitely love to see more money funded towards that rather than scrambling for funding like we are right now, and not having like policemen around our communities, because that's just not serving anyone, as you've seen. Thank you.
Thank you, Samia. Thank you for your testimony. Kerry, we will go back to the video testimony again. Thank you.
City Council men and women. My name is Merle, and I live in South Boston. Since I was young, I thought that the normality in life was that there are certain people in life who are rich and some who are poor. I grew up with hard-working parents who were basically absent all of my life. Their jobs took them from me, and all of the experiences that a child should have with their parents was replaced with an empty home. This was because my parents were forced to work 100 times harder than those who were better off. They had no other choice but to work day and night to pay off the rent of our apartment that was infested with roaches. My parents are not the only ones who come from another country, hoping for opportunities of education for their children, and come to find themselves working more than anything, seeing results come every blue moon. Gentrification is a terrible occurrence that has not only affected families, but also the children who benefit from living in Boston. Having homes that are affordable lessen the stress that students have and can help them perform better. The more housing opportunities are invested for minorities, the more they are able to live in better suited conditions for all their families, instead of neighborhoods that are always referred to as the projects or the hoods because of the lack of income they receive from the government to make a better living. If youth jobs are provided more during and after the pandemic, it would allow more minority students to help their parents regain the money that they lost during the beginning of the pandemic and help them aid their parents. I am asking the City Council to cut at least 10% of Boston Police Department budget, including $40 million from overtime. Mayor Walsh must reinvest that money in Black and Brown communities, prioritizing increasing funding for youth jobs to $15 million and aiding in better housing.
I understand we have still some more testimony recorded.
The Boston Police.
Oh, this is repeating. Jay?
Hi, I am in support of the defunding of the Boston Police Department, of increasing funding to projects and agencies that support Black and Brown people, and increasing the amount of money that supports youth job programs throughout the summer.
Hi, my name is Nathan. I live in Watertown, Massachusetts, but I am a former Boston Public Schools teacher. I was taught in BPS for 4 years. I taught special ed and I taught science in a dual language Spanish-English school. I taught wonderful people. I worked with wonderful people. Many of them, the overwhelming majority, were Black and Brown. And they are suffering right now. It is really, really time to defund the police. We need to invest in Black and Brown communities, like my students and like so many others across the city. We need to cut the police budget. Cut it, cut it. You need to fund summer jobs. We need to hire undocumented young people. We need to give grants to organizations that are supporting the immigrant communities, the Black and Brown communities. There are so many of my students. If you know any teachers, once they're your student, they're always your student. I still love these kids. I still miss these kids. They need summer jobs. They need something to do, especially this summer with COVID and all of its craziness. That's where your money should be going, not the Boston Police Department.
My name's Sarah Thayer and I live in Cambridge, Massachusetts. It's time to defund police and invest in Black and Brown communities. The city must increase funding for youth jobs to $15 million, cut the police budget from $414 to $374 million or less, and cut overtime from $60 million to $20 million or less. Expand jobs to 14 to 22-year-olds and hire undocumented immigrant youth. As a Boston Public School teacher, I can't emphasize how important it is to invest in our youth. My students are brilliant, but they need opportunities to show and grow their skills so that they can become the citizens of this city that we need. And that's why I think we should get more funding to protect and expand youth jobs, and why the police budget and police overtime needs to be cut. We need $15 million to double youth jobs, expand the months, expand the age ranges, and include undocumented young people.
Hi, I'm Allegra Heathstout. I live in Somerville, but I work in Back Bay. And it's time to defund the police and invest in Black and Brown communities. The city must increase funding for youth jobs to $15 million and cut the police budget from $414 to $374 million or less, and cut overtime from $60 million to $20 million or less. In addition, the city should fund 5,000 summer jobs and 1,000 year-round jobs, expand jobs to 14 to 22-year-olds, and hire undocumented young people. Youth jobs are more important now than ever, as the pandemic has had a disastrous impact on our economy. Jobs are hard to come by for everyone, and that means that youth are even more likely to be unemployed. And this will have a disastrous long-term effects on their economic status and overall well-being. So it's imperative that the city act now. And that's why I think that these funding changes are so crucial. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Dan Gelbtuck. As a lifelong Bostonian, as someone who had the great honor to work with teens in Dorchester for a decade, and now as a resident of Dorchester for the last 6 years, I call on the Boston City Council, and especially my city councilor, Councilor Frank Baker, to cut funding from the Boston Police Department and reallocate that funding for youth jobs. Specifically, I hope that the BPD budget will be cut from $414 million and brought down to $374 million, and the overtime budget cut from $60 million to $20 million. That money should be used to increase youth jobs by $15 million to support the young people in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Kerry, for facilitating the recordings. I'd like to just circle back to the lead sponsors of this hearing today to have their closing comments. I also want, so I will go to Councillor Campbell, please.
Thank you, Councillor Braden. I will keep it short and sweet because I know it's getting late. Thank you for chairing the hearing. Congrats again on your first hearing. It's awesome. Thank you to everyone from the administration for the hard work you do. You know, Midori, Rashad, and Rufus, appreciate you guys being here and frankly staying for this long period of time. Thank you to all of our youth-based organizations, our community-based organizations, all of our panelists for coming and providing their perspective from their, from where they sit and what we need to be thinking about. And I'm committed to absolutely ensuring that there is adequate funding for youth jobs, that the numbers that people are requesting, that we make it happen. I've been doing a lot of work with just youth development and making sure there's organizations with respect to our young people that are available to all of them. And not just jobs, mental health, mentorship. The list is long in terms of what our young people need. And in terms of specifically the youth jobs conversation in the context of the police department, as chair of public safety, absolutely we'll be looking at those line items, those numbers, overtime, many other issues to say, how do we redirect resources into this work, into youth jobs, and that our budget definitely is a value statement. And if we want our young people to be successful, well, then we have to align the money with the value. So thank you. And again, I appreciate everyone who participated today. Took a lot of notes, very productive hearing, and look forward to continued conversations. Thank you. And thank you, Councillor Braden. And of course, thank you to my co-sponsors, Councillor Mejia and Councillor Janey.
Councillor Janey, have you any closing remarks?
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. I too would like to thank my sisters in service, Councillor Campbell and Councillor Mejia, for their partnership and their leadership in this space. Very important issue, as we've all heard. Grateful to all of the young folks and all of the activists and advocates and educators who participated in this hearing. Very important issue. Excited to kind of look to see what we can cut and how we can invest differently. I agree, and I think, you know, the evidence is clear. When we do the investment, we see the reduction in crime, and we heard that loud and clear in this hearing. And so as we continue this conversation around our budget and around funding, I hope that the advocates and everyone stays engaged in the conversation.
I think we're losing you, Councillor Councillor Janey. You're cutting in and out.
Or to see we can invest in for change.
Councillor Janey?
Yes, I wrapped up. I'm sorry, were you guys able to hear me?
We heard most of it, but it was a little choppy at the end
Well,
there.
I will just defer to my colleagues. Thank you so much to everyone.
Thank you, President Jenny. Councillor Mejia, would you like to make some closing comments?
Yes, thank you so much, Councillor Breeden, for hosting your first public hearing. Great job. And to my sisters in service, Councillor Campbell, for your leadership in this space, as well as President Council Janey. And thank you to the panelists and the administration who participated, and for the public testimonies. I am really here to just say three things. One is that public testimony is really about an opportunity for us to amplify our voices, and we hear you loud and clear. I would also like to urge the administration to recognize that if we're really serious about changing the way we do business here in the city of Boston, it's about how we utilize our budget as a value statement and making sure that we are allocating resources and support to summer youth employment programs, to year-round programming, and making sure that all the work that when we look at workforce development, that we're doing this with a trauma-informed lens, and that we are pouring dollars into ensuring that even when we're talking about issues of employment, that we don't lose the conversation of mental wellness. And so I'm here for all of it. Thank you again to our panelists and the administration and the public testimonies for utilizing this space to have your voice heard. And we hear you loud and clear. Keep it up. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'd like to call on Councillor Asabi George for some final comments.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I will be brief. Appreciate the leadership of the lead sponsors on this effort, and happy to add my name in support of this effort. As a former high school teacher and former PIC coordinator, I value the opportunities that employment bring our young people. And for me, this conversation, a particular point of focus is really the slightly older age group and the work that remains undone to support our young people here in the city of Boston. So look forward to continued effort, both in the work and also in calling for additional funding to support these efforts. But we need to fund it. We need to create the policies around it. We need to make sure that we have the critical partnerships in order to make those employment opportunities available to our young residents, in particular in the city of Boston. Thank you, Madam Chair. Congratulations. And thank you to everyone who participated today, especially the young people who took time and delivered testimony and served on the panels. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Asabi George. Councillor Bach.
Yes, thank you so much, Madam Chair. Thanks to all the youth advocates who spoke today, and to Rashad and Midori and Rufus. Yeah, I'm excited about the additional $4 million for the summer. I'm, I guess, most excited about the idea of just us trying to, I feel like on this front, all of our headspace, right, has to just shift into how do we make sure that we spend the money in the sense of actually getting the youth into these opportunities for the summer. And I just really agree with Councillor Campbell that anywhere that we have an opportunity and we have a young person needing an opportunity this summer, like, let's make it happen, whatever money we need to make it happen. Yeah, and I really just appreciate, I know the team at YE has generated a huge number of new jobs in the last couple of months, and glad about that, and just really want to make sure that we take advantage of every opportunity on that front. And yeah, and as I said before, work on the year-round jobs front, make sure that we're doing everything we can in partnership with the advocates. So thank you so much for having this. And I would just, again, want to thank all my colleagues for holding this important conversation.
Thank you, Councillor Bach. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to all our colleagues, city councillors, for joining this conversation today. I want to thank especially all the young youth advocates and for their testimony and for their passion and for their advocacy. It's really important. Upstream investment in youth jobs will pay dividends in the long run in terms of reducing of crime and really helping young people to establish their work history and get good jobs going forward. So it's really important to our mental health and our stability going forward. Thank you also to the members of the administration who have participated. It's a very valuable and important conversation, and we look forward to continuing it. This conversation will be ongoing, but for now, I would like to draw this hearing to a close. Thank you. I've got my little wallet. Thank you.
Goodbye, everybody. It's nice to see everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Kelly.
Good job, Liz. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye now.